Episode 13, Uncensored Highlights.
Well, we can't do it when he's got Molotov cocktails in there.
If you are fighting, you have to.
That's what he's got right here is Molotov cocktails.
Yeah, and you see the marks on the ground, basically where the fires were. It's all black. So all the soot's on the ground. That's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a little hard to hear what he's yelling because A, he has a Qatari accent, and then B, everybody else around is yelling too. You are killers. What type of projection is that? He literally just tried to kill them. These old ladies never hurt a fly in their life, and he's yelling at them that they are killers because they support Israel's right to defend itself from killers just like him and just like the people he supports. If there's one thing that these terrorists excel at, it's propaganda and marketing, but also at projection. I think Douglas Murray says, when it comes to anti-Semitism, tell me what you blame the Jews for, and I'll tell you what you are. Like we mentioned earlier, about projectionism, where they'll just project what they do on other people. We've seen this happen. This is basically the distillation of the entire conflict. So the distillation of the entire conflict is terrorists or terrorist supporters attacking people, and then anytime they try to respond or try to defend themselves or try to stop attacks, like if Israel tries to stop Hamas from shooting 5,000 rockets at them and at towns and villages and cities with people, by the way, not settlements, there are no settlements around Gaza, then they get blamed, Israel gets blamed for doing a massacre and everything like that, when they're just trying to defend themselves, and they're being really careful while trying to defend themselves, right? So this is the thing, blame the victim. Claim that you're the victim and then blame the victim. And this really is a distillation of what's been going on. It's 75 years of this. Because they know we try and avoid bombing mosques or schools or churches or whatever, hospitals, that's what they use as their command center. Israel just annihilated Mohammed Sinwar's brother, who was in charge of the October 7th and who is the current leader of Hamas, in a hospital, right? And everybody says Israel attacks hospitals because Hamas is using hospitals. But then when you drop a bomb on a hospital and children die, everybody's going to blame Israel, when in reality, it's against the laws of war for Hamas to use the hospital as a base of terror. And if it is used as a base of terror, Israel is allowed, according to the laws of war, to bomb
Trump
buildings.
feeds us while Hamas starves us. Take note, everybody. Hamas talks about resistance, weapons, and a steadfast people, but look at how people all over Gaza are going to the Americans to get food. Bless Trump. Thank you, Trump. The one who feeds me, may God bless him. Better than those from Hamas and Qatar, who say stay in your homes and don't cooperate with the Americans and Israelis. No, we'll cooperate with them. We want to eat. If you came to feed me, then I wouldn't have to go to the Americans. But come feed me instead of doing nothing from Qatar while living in comfort. So we're starting to see some of these statements pushing back against Hamas, which actually lines up with a statement from the IDF that we'll run through here in a moment, suggesting that Hamas might continually be losing their grip on the Palestinian population.
And Preston Stewart is really great. He does a phenomenal coverage of both the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. Definitely worth giving him a follow and subscribing to his YouTube channel. Like, the missile is basically a robot because it controls itself. The payload is satellites. Those are basically a robot. And then it lands on a drone ship, which is a robot. And it's like a robot takes off, goes to space, drops other robots off in space, then returns to Earth and lands on a robotic ship. And the coolest part is, in order to stabilize it after it lands, they have this little small robot that's pretty heavy that comes to the bottom and literally grabs it to stabilize it, because the ocean could be a rocky place. I remember 10 years ago waiting for the competition to catch up, and everybody's like, 2 months the competition is going to catch up. I was like, let's give them a few years. But it's been a decade and nobody's even attempted it yet. That just shows how complex rocket science is.
He looks like Dumbledore in the middle of a brutal divorce. It's been a terrible, awful year for the Jews. Let's all enjoy this. His hat, I'm pretty sure, is made of paper. That's an obvious fake beard. And what is with the white ribbon? That's what priests do. Jews, we don't do white ribbons. If you're gonna do a hate crime, you can't just Google it, okay? This is what happens if you go to ChatGPT and you say, hey, I want a hate crime at JCC. What should I dress as? His name is Keith Garland. He's 31 years old, and they caught on to the ruse when he walked into the JCC and asked to speak to a rabbi dressed like an Amish guy on a bender.
That would be what you'd get off of Temu, just by the way. I think that's...
Yeah. If you wrote rabbi costume and Temu, that's what you're going to get. But the sad part is that this guy was trying to commit a hate crime. He walked into JCC, for anybody unfamiliar, is a Jewish community center. So he walked into a Jewish community center, and I don't know what he wanted to do, but probably not very good things by the fact that he is a neo-Nazi. But like you said, you got to learn to laugh about what happens, whether it's good or it's bad. You just got to laugh along because life throws you lemons, but you got to enjoy the lemonade.
It's just scary that sometimes it's hard to tell the comedy from the reality and the reality from the
Ever wish your
comedy.
child was a full-blown liberal idiot, desperate to turn them into a Jew-hating extremist who'd rather burn a flag than think for themselves? Harvard University has the answer. For the low price of $500,000, we'll transform your kid into the kind of zealot who sets bags of shit on fire in the street, screaming about whatever CNN's whining about today. Our elite program guarantees they'll swap reason for rage and facts for feelings, faster than you can say protest permit. But wait, there's more. Our tuition doesn't cover the essentials. Blue hair dye, nose piercings, and a weak, flaccid body are sold separately. And don't forget parents, you'll be footing the bill for these. Plus financially supporting your adult child for the rest of their life because they'll never become productive members of society. I work when you can protest.
Results not guaranteed. Side effects include chronic virtue signaling, allergic reactions to logic, and an obsession with trending hashtags. Harvard University is not liable for arrests, property damage, or your kid's newfound hatred of you. Consult your bank account before enrolling.
Yeah, that's really great. Harvard has an endowment of over $5 billion or $10 billion that they haven't touched and they don't want to spend. Instead of that, they've been using taxpayer funds. So this is a very comedic take on that.
All right, now let's join Yo and Joe for all this and much, much more in episode 13, Uncensored.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to the YoJoeShow podcast. Hey, Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Heart's beating, lungs are working. How you doing?
I'm awake and alive, Joe. It's nice to talk finally.
Yep. It's another day back on the seat and with more things to talk about. And that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, the things we will be talking about are not all positive. So if you guys do not like negative news, unfortunately, this is the uncensored episode. We've seen that some of our previous episodes have been played with a little bit by the algorithms. So this one, we decided to not bow down to the algo gods and discuss all the topics we've been pushing off for the last few episodes.
Yep. And there, as usual, we include some humor and some fun things sprinkled throughout the episode and certainly towards the end. We always want to end on a positive note. I'm a firm believer that laughter is the best medicine. We always want to make sure everyone gets their dose of the best medicine when they're with us. Perhaps a good place to start, we talked about the fact that you mentioned just now that sometimes the different platforms aren't always favorable to reporting or discussing even topics that are in the news. And sometimes we see that the news doesn't even report all of the news or it's very slanted. So perhaps I think everyone will appreciate the first clip we're going to put on, which essentially talks a little bit about how censorship is still alive and well throughout the world. And we have subscribers that are not just in the United States. And we always wonder if really the content we put out there, whether there's a difference in who sees what, depending on where they live. Let's start off with that. And that'll be, I think, a good jump off point for our first discussion.
Yeah, it's a great way to get the topic started.
In Russia last year, 400 people were arrested for things that they said on social media. 400 people in Russia. Obviously, this country is very different. How many people do you think were arrested in Britain for things they said on social media last year?
Go on.
Take a guess.
I have no idea.
3,300.
Really? Arrested for what they said on social media?
Yeah.
What sort of things get you
Well,
arrested?
one example I give in my show is there was a young woman from Liverpool called Chelsea Russell, and people can look this up. Her friend was killed in a car crash, a 19-year-old woman, and she posted the lyrics of his favorite song on her Instagram. And there was a rap song, so the lyrics contained several instances of the N-word. She was arrested, prosecuted, found guilty, given 500 hours of community service and a fine, tagged, and for a year she was under 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. curfew.
My goodness.
In Britain.
In Britain.
In 2018.
That was John Anderson. He was a former deputy prime minister in Australia, and he has a show that he puts together like this. And these are the type of things that are just...
John Anderson was the one responding. Konstantin Kisin from the phenomenal podcast named Trigonometry was the one who was doing most of the example there. Trigonometry is a phenomenal podcast, and Konstantin Kisin is really brilliant, and he's one of the people who's very much aware of the dangers the West is facing, and he's very good at speaking up on that. So I recommend everybody to give him a follow.
To both of them, actually. That's, I think, the important thing, and one of the one of the breath of fresh airs we're feeling with the legacy media having taken a bit of a back step is that we have social media and there are people posting all kinds of things, but even that content is being restricted and not only censored or deplatformed now, it's people are being arrested in some countries. And you're thinking the UK, Great Britain is certainly not going to be the place where someone's going to be arrested just for saying something, or in this case, reposting the lyrics of a song that I'm sure you could turn on the radio and listen, even satellite radio, and probably listen to the song being played. But somehow you could say that's somehow hate speech. So it's interesting how things could be manipulated in such a manner. And I think it's easy for people not to realize that's still happening. And in some cases, it's getting worse. And if we don't at least recognize that it's a real problem, I think that's going to be probably the way things will continue to be. I think we need to speak up and bring up the realities of censorship because people need to be able to voice their opinions. They need to call out what they're seeing. It doesn't mean everyone has to agree.
Yeah, I think the thing that's most blood boiling, and this will really boil your blood, is once you start realizing the whole situation with the grooming gangs that was happening in the UK for the last at least 2 decades, where the Metropolitan Police in the United Kingdom failed and deliberately did not arrest pedophiles because they were from a certain faith and because they were immigrants. So in order to be avoid categorized as Islamophobic, like there was a situation where the police gets a call from a 13-year-old girl screaming for help. And they go to the scene and they arrive at a home and they see two 13-year-old white girls basically naked, completely drunk and drugged out of their brains, with 7 older Pakistani men in their 50s and 60s. And the police did not arrest the rapist, the pedophiles. These are children. Instead, they arrested the 13-year-old girls for misorderly misconduct. So because they were drunk, even though it was the men who gave them the alcohol and made them drunk, they let the men completely free while they arrested these girls. And there was another case where the police released one of these girls, and they sent her to a taxi. And then right in the police station, basically, or the taxi driver picked her up and then raped her in his car right then and there. And then what will really put it over the top is not long ago it was reported that British prisons are overwhelmed because there are so many criminals, because of all these people they've been importing. And because the police are overwhelmed, but they are desperate for room to arrest grandmas who posted something absurd on Facebook or something normal on Facebook or something that just shows the hypocrisy of the British police on Facebook. So in order to make room for these grandma Facebook posters, they literally gave early release to pedophiles, to rapists, to murderers, and let them out early from prison in order to make space for these people with these speech crimes. And that, when you realize that's been happening on for decades, and that Keir Starmer, who's currently the prime minister, was deeply involved with all of this when he worked for the police, I think, or the State Department type of thing, in charge of the police, and or the prosecutor or something like that. And he basically declined to prosecute so many of these cases personally. So he is like right there involved in what's been going on himself. And it really just makes your blood boil. And it's time for the people of the UK to get up and stand up and replace this evil man. I assume he's very professional and he's very courteous and he's very respectable. He seems like a nice person, but after you realize what he allowed to happen under his shift in order to avoid being categorized as Islamophobic, the systemic rape of Britain's white girls and Christian children, it is completely, you can't forgive such a thing. And I think he belongs in jail, but again, I'm no prosecutor myself. But what's for sure is we shouldn't be letting out these criminals in order to make room for people who make Facebook posts. That's just...
I think the sad reality is here in this country as well, we have a lot of improper, let's say, censoring of open speech. And there's been some false narratives that have been created. And when people are telling the truth, the truth is often being flagged as the misinformation or disinformation. It's quite surreal at times. I think it's gotten a little better, but we're not immune to any of this. Maybe shifting gears to a story that is being widely reported, and actually the story we're going to start off by covering this horrific attack that happened as we're recording this just yesterday. Ultimately, unbelievable. Within the last couple of weeks, we've had two different attacks. One where we had a beautiful young couple that were in Washington, D.C., where we had a wonderful couple that were actually diplomats from Israel who were about to get married, I think in about a week or so, and they were murdered in cold blood. And if that wasn't enough, you have now this guy who comes out of the blue and goes to a meeting that is an awareness thing, and people are running for basically the cause is to help bring awareness to help get the hostages that are still being held in Gaza by Hamas to get them released. We're over 600 days now, I believe. It's like insane. And there are people out there just trying to bring attention to this, and they're basically have Molotov cocktails thrown at them in the United States. This isn't some third world country here. And we have someone on our soil going and doing this. Luckily, he was caught, but I think as a basis for the conversation, let's start with the most recent reporting that we have, this one from Fox, and then we can continue. We have a lot of the coverage that actually came out, a lot of the cell phone video. We'll talk a little bit about what happened, but let's start with this introduction. I think
the most important part that connects both of these stories is that the terrorist attackers yelled "Free Palestine" while both of them were being arrested and while they were committing their attacks. So these are hate-motivated attacks. It's not about freeing Palestine, it's about killing Jews, and we'll discuss this more as we go on. So let's take a look.
Here we go.
The FBI is investigating what is being called a targeted terror attack in Boulder, Colorado. The alleged attack happened at a mall in between 13th and 14th Street. That's in downtown, along Pearl Street in downtown Boulder. We're hearing from the FBI Director, Kash Patel, calling it a targeted terror attack. We're also hearing just moments ago from the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, who says he is closely monitoring the situation in Boulder. His thoughts go out to the people who have been injured, impacted by this heinous act of terror. Details are just coming in. Our local Denver Fox affiliate KDVR telling us that around 3 p.m., some sort of device exploded in what was an organized walk of a group that is pro-Israel that was walking in support of the hostages still held in Gaza.
So it's worth noting that this attacker, before this attack happened, there was a protest from one of the pro-jihad, quote unquote, pro-Palestine groups in the Boulder, Denver area, calling for its fans to go. And they had a post on Instagram with a drawing of a woman throwing a Molotov cocktail, right? So these organizations, some funded by Qatar usually, who funds Hamas, are inciting people to throw Molotov cocktails. And then somebody actually does throw a Molotov cocktail. The terrorist in this account, I think his name was Mohammed Suleiman. And I read somewhere, I don't know if this is verified, that he moved from Qatar to the United States 2 years ago under the open border policy of Biden. I don't know if those details are confirmed, but that is something that I have read. Yeah, this gets back to the whole issue of basically closing the borders, but also removing people who don't fit into American culture, who don't appreciate Western values. Because if they're an antithesis, if their belief system is an antithesis to the values, let's just say Judeo-Christian values, or I'm not a religious person, but even if you say agnostic of values that make America as special as it is, then these people should not be welcome and they should be deported. Like we're going to cover soon in Europe, like it is basically getting too late. And Elon Musk has been mentioning a number of times that it's starting to seem like the only possible outcome for Europe is a civil war, because when invaders try and come to invade and conquer your land, and unfortunately they've been let in and imported and put up in fancy hotels on taxpayers' bills, including in the UK. Literally, they've been put up in castles on taxpayers' dimes, and these people hate the United Kingdom. They hate the United States. They hate the West. It's not about colonialism. It's not about anything. It's about the values that these Western societies hold dear. And it's about the fact that the vast majority of these quote-unquote immigrants, quote-unquote refugees, which they're not, they're invaders, but they believe in values that are very different. They believe in conquering all of Earth for Muhammad and for Allah's sake. And that is something that is just utterly incompatible with Western values.
So that's really the reason that the Trump administration used the Insurrection Act of 1807 or whatever it was, because basically the idea was that the country is being invaded. We just had some 20 million people be let into the country without really being vetted. And then we have all these district courts now trying to interfere and prevent deportations. But ultimately, yes, the gentleman, using the term loosely, who suspect, was the latest information is that he came in under the Biden era programs. He ultimately got a work visa. The visa expired and he's still here. And he really is here illegally at this point. And I guess not only is he here illegally, but he really didn't want to. He doesn't love where he's at. I don't know why anyone would go to another country that they hate, other than if perhaps they have an idea of doing some harm to the people there. I mean, the whole thing is just mind-boggling that somebody living here who came under whatever status to this country isn't embracing the country and trying to be a positive force for the country's good and the other people living here, not to go in. So apparently what he did in the videos we saw and the reporting we saw, he used Molotov cocktails. So he basically lighted up these things and threw them at people and set them on fire. The initial reports of people
followed the instructions on the poster he saw that called him to go there.
So we're not posting that, but yeah, I saw that as well, just for our audience. The poster basically depicts going and essentially having
About the counter protest for this event.
Might have been. They do show someone holding a bottle that's essentially a Molotov cocktail on fire, what have you. And it's almost like they're giving instructions or hints as to what they expect people to do. This just happened, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this and what he admits to. But the bottom line is this is insanity. You're trying to burn people alive, people you don't even know. They've done nothing to you. So
women supposedly were injured in this attack.
Yeah, and initially the early reporting by the chief of police in Boulder was essentially downplaying that this wasn't necessarily terrorist attack and what have you. But let's play the next clip. The FBI is at least being a little more honest on the tail end of their initial press release. Here we go.
I'm able to confirm there are 6 victims, ages 67 to 88. All of them have been transported to local hospitals. This attack happened at a regularly scheduled weekly peaceful event. Witnesses are reporting that the subject used a makeshift flamethrower and threw an incendiary device into the crowd. The suspect was heard to yell "Free Palestine" during the attack. The subject has been identified as Mohammed Sabri Solomon, and he's 45 years old. The FBI is processing the crime scene in the subject vehicle and interviewing key witnesses. We're assisting Boulder police in providing technical, analytic, and additional forensic resources. As a result of these preliminary facts, it is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism.
So do we have the following video of somebody who was there and started yelling at the victims?
We have all those videos coming up. So we have the videos that were all cell phone videos that were taken on site. We'll go through that and we'll cover that as well. So we'll keep going through them. It's just frankly shocking, really, that this is happening. The next video basically shows it's one of the initial videos that came out, which shows people coming up to the scene, and it shows literally you see just the magnitude of smoke coming up from the fires that were caused by this. So this very next video kind of sets the theme of what the people were experiencing that were in the crowd watching this. Let's go ahead and we'll put that up, and then we'll move towards putting the one you're just mentioning. That was another pretty odd reaction. I think that warrants some discussion as well. But this is what people were seeing at the scene at a short distance away.
Where have you gone?
Stay.
So the guy,
Yeah.
you see without the shirt in this video, the sunglasses, he's holding two Molotov cocktails, two bottles, and they got like things coming out the top. When I first saw this video, because this is one of the early videos that came out, I had no clue that guy had anything. He was just a bystander.
He looks like a victim, being shirtless
Right.
and all
You
after
don't
an
know what's
attack.
going on. Yeah, he might have
And the
given
bottles almost look like bottles of water because alcohol is clear. So it's like maybe he's wanting to pour water on the fire, on the victims of the fire. But it turns out that those were Molotov cocktails. Thankfully, he was arrested with those two Molotov cocktails in his hands. I'm pretty sure it doesn't seem he had a chance to ignite them and throw them as well, because the carnage could have been even worse. I think in this FBI clip you played earlier, they mentioned everybody was elderly, or did I mishear?
I think a lot of this is still unfolding as far as the information they're releasing. We'll know in a few days. I think more, certainly the totality of those injured and so forth. The very next video actually shows him just shortly before he was arrested, carrying those two bottles, and you can see there's like the red like ribbon or something coming off the top, which would be typically what you'd light to set these things off. And even when I first saw this video, I didn't know what he was holding. Like you and I discussed, it looked almost like spray bottles until we thought about what it really looks like. And let's take a look at him, just going back and forth. To your point, as the crowds came up to render aid, this guy could have done more harm because people were focused on helping those that were injured. And for whatever reason, luckily this guy didn't set off any more of these things. But it does show just the danger all of us have just being out in the community. You don't know. And especially when you're rendering aid to someone, this guy could still be wandering around and doing more.
That is an old tactic of terrorists where they'll shoot. So during the war, there was a situation in Israel where Hezbollah shot missiles into a soccer field of Druze who are non-Jewish. We discussed, it's a phenomenal, very interesting religion we discussed in a previous episode. But there were like 12 Druze children playing soccer on a soccer field, and then Hezbollah missile landed there and killed at least like 12 or 13 or 20 of them, or something devastating like that, all young children just playing soccer. But then what happened is they waited for all of the aid to come and for people to come and render help, and then they shot more rockets that killed even more people. And this is a repeating theme that they'll do. So they'll wait for all the ambulances, let's say they'll plant an IED or hide a bomb somewhere, and then when first responders are coming to help the victims, they implode that as well and to kill the first responders. So being a first responder anywhere when you're fighting radical Islam is a dangerous job, and those people deserve our thanks and appreciation. And like we mentioned in the past, you used to be a paramedic and I used to be a first responder for a time period. It's important for everybody to help and participate whenever they can. Dangerous.
Let's take a look.
We're here, brother. We're here. We can't do nothing about that. We can't do nothing. We can. Not here. You have to end Zionists. Not here, bro. You're not.
He's watching video right now. He was wearing an orange suit with something on his back.
Spraying alcohol.
Spraying alcohol, but what he did was he made it look like he was here.
He's making Molotov cocktails. Well, we can't do it when he's got Molotov cocktails on. If you are fighting, you have to. That's what he's got right here. Is Molotov.
Yeah, and you see the marks on the ground, basically where the fires were. It's all black. So all the soot's on the ground. That's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a little hard to hear what he's yelling because A, he has a Qatari accent, and then B, everybody else around is yelling too. But one thing I did pick up he was saying is he was yelling at these 70-year-old ladies who he just burnt alive and saying, "You are killers. You are killers." What type of projection is that? He literally just tried to kill them. These old ladies never hurt a fly in their life. And he's yelling at them that they are killers because they support Israel's right to defend itself from killers just like him and just like the people he supports. If there's one thing that these terrorists excel at, it's propaganda and marketing, but also at projection. I think Douglas Murray says, when it comes to anti-Semitism, tell me what you blame the Jews for, and I'll tell you what you are guilty of.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll see that where people will go and they'll mirror what they're saying, what they're accusing you of is what they're guilty of. That's
exactly.
This next clip is the one you were mentioning earlier. And there's a heavy-set gentleman who's wearing like a bluish or purplish top. You'll see him moving back and forth. Pay attention to what he says, because what's really shocking is towards the end of the clip, he actually is blaming the people who are there rendering aid. And those people were saying, stay away from the guy's dangerous or what have you. And this guy comes up to them and says, You're the cause of all this. It's because of you that this is happening. Something to that effect. Let's watch, listen, and this is probably the most bizarre part of the whole thing, when you would think everybody should be trying to render aid and everyone should be trying to stop the guy from harming any more people. Last thing we're going to do is start blaming the victims themselves.
Stay away. Just stay away. He's right there. He's throwing Molotov cocktails right there. Where you fucking belong? And you going to jail, man. I don't give a fuck. You don't antagonize shit like that. You cause this shit. He's not. Right. He didn't do anything. Chill. Everybody get back. Everybody get back. Everybody get back. He's right there. He's on the ground right there. Who was the person that right here? This guy right here. I wasn't even here. No, this guy is the one.
Now, the only hope is that gentleman was referring to someone who was actually antagonizing, because we didn't hear the original audio. So maybe there was someone saying something that they shouldn't, and maybe, who knows? Maybe that guy really isn't saying anything wrong. Maybe he's accusing someone that was in the crowd, but it's just an odd thing in the confusion to see someone
shit
other than the guy who's throwing these things at people. It's just odd.
Yeah, he was yelling at them, "You caused this shit." It seems like he was yelling at the victims who were injured and at the people rendering aid. That's the direction he was yelling at it, and not at the terrorist. That's for sure. He had his back towards the terrorist, so he wasn't yelling it at the terrorist. Maybe there was somebody else behind, but he was yelling, "You caused this shit. You caused this shit." And
Right.
Like we mentioned earlier, about projectionism, where they'll just project what they do on other people. We've seen this happen. This is basically the distillation of the entire conflict. So the distillation of the entire conflict is terrorists or terrorist supporters attacking people, and then anytime they try to respond or try to defend themselves or try to stop attacks, like if Israel tries to stop Hamas from shooting 5,000 rockets at them and at towns and villages and cities with people, by the way, not settlements, there are no settlements around Gaza, then they get blamed, Israel gets blamed for doing a massacre and everything like that, when they're just trying to defend themselves, and they're being really careful while trying to defend themselves, right? So this is the thing: blame the victim, claim that you're the victim, and then blame the victim. And this really is a distillation of what's been going on. It's 75 years of this, right? Because Islam has one will and one will only, and that is to conquer the world. Allahu Akbar, which is the war chant, it translates as God is. I used to think it translates as God is great, but it actually translates as God as in our God, Allah. Allah is the greatest, right? So he's not just great, he's greater than all of the other gods of all the other religions, right? And therefore, Islam must be dominant upon all other religions. And Islam has been trying to conquer the world for thousands of years. And like we discussed in previous podcasts, they've conquered Europe 3 different times. Israel's at the forefront, where it's like a lighthouse in the middle of a stormy ocean, where it's trying to be a place of civilization surrounded by this barbarism, but instead it gets blamed every time it's attacked. And like we saw, the protest against Israel started on October 8th, before Israel did anything in retaliation, before anything happened. These people went out and started to protest to support the terrorists, to support the rapists and the murderers. So it's just very sad and disheartening.
And look, back to Gaza, ultimately, a lot of twisted news has come out of there. Just like in this chaotic scene, you don't really know who that gentleman was really addressing. He definitely wasn't addressing the guy who committed the atrocity, but who knows if there was even other people in the crowds that were saying improper things or egging on or encouraging what was being done. Regardless, the whole thing's vile. And just like you said, what do we keep hearing out of Gaza? That the people are starving, they don't have food, yet we know aid's being sent there, and we know where it's going. Hamas is taking the aid shipments, the food, and is selling it. The markets are full over there. We've seen, both you and I have seen tons of videos of the markets having food, but the food's being sold to the people
at ridiculous, unbelievable prices, like 3,000 times what it would typically be, because that's the way Hamas has been funding themselves, is they've been stealing these convoys of trucks filled with food and taking them. Just on the last video, before we move on to this new topic, I think it's worth noticing that the victims are laying on the floor, surrounded in blood and water and fuel, with American flags and Israeli flags, but what you mostly notice is American flags. So it's one side who loves this country, they love their home, they love their country, they love Western civilization, And then one side who wants to burn it all down. They just want to burn not just the flags. They burn the flags actively in every single protest. American flags, not just Israeli flags. But they want to burn it all down. They want to burn all of America down and all of Western civilization down. And yeah, it's a real fight. And the problem is that the West is not really aware that we're in a war. They don't think it's a cultural war. They think it's Israel who colonized Palestine, and that's why the Palestinians are just reacting. This is a religious war, and if we don't get up and we don't get our act together, then we won't be able to stop it. If we don't realize the first step of curing a disease is recognizing that you are sick, right? So that's the most important part, is to realize that this overall is a religious war. There have been terrorists who were not Muslims. In Israel, a lot of Israeli Christian Arabs were just brainwashed by some of their Muslim neighbors into committing terror attacks. So there have been terror attacks by Christians as well. But overall, as a thing, this is 95, 99% of all terror attacks that happen are caused by Muslims in the name of Islam. And like we said, they chant Allahu Akbar, which is this war chant. And then you tell that to somebody of the faith and they're like, oh no, it's just a peaceful thing saying God is great. What is wrong with saying God is great? It's like, yeah, first of all, it's not God is great. It's our God is the greatest, but also it's a war chant. And it's for thousands of years, for 1,400 years, as they've been attempting to conquer the entire world, this is the chant that they yell. So when you hear somebody yelling that, be aware, basically.
Yeah, and circling back to the discussion on Gaza, that's why all this ties in. All these people shouting to free Palestine, what have you. If you think about the food and the aid and all the things that are being done, no matter how much you do, it never seems to be properly reported as a positive thing. There just never is enough. We know why there isn't enough. It's being taken and being misappropriated. And we know that the current administration just finally did send aid. They discussed with Israel and said, we are going to send some aid in. We're going to make sure they get it. And what happened in this one warehouse where the aid was being distributed?
Yeah, so let's give a little bit of a background. So throughout this entire war, even though if you look at the history of wars, almost never was one side forced to provide food to the population that hates them, the enemy population. That has basically never happened in any wars, but Israel has been doing this for the entire war. But what Israel realizes is that this is what's keeping Hamas in power. No matter how much we killed, they still remain a violent cartel, a violent gang that hijacks these food convoys and then sells that at ridiculous prices. And they take whatever they take for themselves. And then the remaining is what they sell on the market. And like we saw, the markets are full, and they'll sell that on the market at ridiculously unbelievable prices. And that's how they make a lot of money. And what's changed recently is Israel said before this past phase, first of all, Israel stopped shipping an aid to Gaza for a few months. And the reason was to let the warehouses filled with aid empty out. Let the aid, first of all, empty out so that the new trucks coming in now that we're seeing are not going directly to Hamas. Instead, they did this partnership with an American organization that was supposed to be in charge of distributing the aid, and they were supposed to distribute the aid to families directly instead of them being sold on the market, so that each family got an aid package for their family. And this should be in sanitized zones with less terrorists. But I think you have a clip of some of what's been going on there.
Yeah, so this is a warehouse where aid was being distributed. And the alarming thing is that they opened fire on the people that were coming to get supplies, because again, they have no interest in allowing the United States to provide aid. No one wants the aid to actually get to the people who need it, so that they can continue the narrative that the people aren't getting fed and they're starving and so forth. They want that clearly to continue. It's just, you got to see it to believe it. So here we go. And this is by En Mazig. He puts this post and he writes, Hamas opened fire on Palestinians taking food from an aid warehouse, killing at least 5. No IDF, no Israel, just Hamas, murdering their own. Any media coverage? Of course not. It's silent.
مباشر الآن. بنحكي معكم من وراء الجدران. أين متخبيين هنا ورا.
I mean, what in the world?
Yeah, so there's actually been, here you hear the shots and we see the Andrea Murcia, which is like mess that of everybody running for their lives. But we don't actually see the shooters. There have been other videos that were released where you actually see the terrorists standing in the crowd with an AK-47 just shooting at everybody around them. And that's because this is starving Hamas of its last vestige of power, right? So Hamas is against the Palestinian aid, the Palestinian people getting aid. So just remember this. Anytime you hear somebody say the people in Palestine are starving, the people in Gaza are starving, realize that many times that is true. But it's important to realize who to lay the blame at, right? So Israel has provided more than 2,000 calories for every person in Gaza, basically throughout this war. But we are seeing people starving. So then what's this mismatch? And like we said, basically anywhere there's starvation on planet Earth, it's not because of lack of food. It's because there are warlords who are taking that food and starving their people. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. The last vestige of power that they had was getting money from selling the food. Now that Israel is trying to find a workaround, and by the way, the head of this American organization that was in charge of distributing food, he just quit, which is a kick in the wheels of this, which is overall positive development, because you know that this is a positive development by seeing the way Hamas is reacting, right? So when Hamas is starting to shoot anybody who's quote unquote cooperating with the Israelis by trying to feed their families, you realize that this is all Hamas's cause. This is all Hamas is doing. So when people say children are starving in Gaza, say yes, because Hamas, right? That's the important thing to remember.
Yeah, and listen, one of these videos that we have up now, coming up next, that's been circulating, it just speaks to that. These are people on the streets of Gaza. And I had the original raw video, which only had subtitles, but this one actually has Preston Stewart actually reporting on it, as he does such a great job. And it speaks to exactly what's going on. And here are Gazans basically thankful and thanking Trump for sending the aid. They basically say, we don't care. We wouldn't be thanking them if we were getting it from Hamas or from anyone else. We need to eat. Let's look at that.
They're thanking Hamas and the Israeli Defense Forces. So this is remarkable because they're actually threatening the quote unquote people trying to massacre and to create ethnic cleansing and murder them all, right?
Yeah, let's look at the video. It really speaks to what's going on.
Message from the people to Hamas. Give it up and go away. Trump feeds us while Hamas starves us. Bet you didn't expect to hear that today. So we got a couple segments, Palestinians being interviewed in the Gaza Strip following the receipt of aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation over the last couple days. Let's go ahead and play the first one. I'm going to read the subtitles as we go for anybody just listening along here. It says, "Thank you, Trump. Hamas, we have arrived. God bless Trump. Trump feeds us while Hamas starves us. Take note, everybody. Hamas talks about resistance, weapons, and a steadfast people, but look at how people all over Gaza are going to the Americans to get food. Bless Trump. Thank you, Trump. The one who feeds me, may God bless him. Better than those from Hamas and Qatar who say stay in your homes and don't cooperate with the Americans and Israelis. No, we'll cooperate with them. We want to eat. If you came to feed me, then I wouldn't have to go to the Americans. But come feed me instead of doing nothing from Qatar while living in comfort." So we're starting to see some of these statements pushing back against Hamas, which actually lines up with a statement from the IDF that we'll run through here in a moment, suggesting that Hamas might continually be losing their grip on the Palestinian population.
Yeah, and Preston Stewart is really great. He does a phenomenal coverage of both the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. Definitely worth giving him a follow and subscribing to his YouTube channel. This is not the clip I was mentioning. There was another clip of somebody who basically yelled, "Thank you to Trump and thank you to the defense forces, the Israeli defense forces." And the funny thing is that the interviewer at the end says, "Can you hear that in the studio? Yeah, it seems like the starvation of the people of Gaza is making them go crazy and talk in these weird ways." So this is the quote unquote reporter. And like we said, there are very few reporters in Gaza that are actually reporters and not also terrorists. But he's basically trying to cover and saying, "Oh no, this is not, don't actually, this person just said that, but don't actually air it. Or if this is live, like we're in trouble. Oh, he must be going crazy." But what this man was yelling is, "You guys in Qatar," and that the reason is many of the leadership of Hamas actually live in 7-star hotels in Qatar. And you're like, 7-star hotels, where do those exist? In Qatar and in Dubai, but mostly in Qatar. And these terrorists live in these 7-star hotels like billionaires. Most of them are actually billionaires because they were able to steal from the funds that Gaza received. So just important to realize that Gaza has received more aid over the last 20 years than the entire Marshall Plan took to rebuild all of Europe. So anytime you go to Europe and you see all these beautiful, magnificent buildings, they have all been rebuilt. Most of them, the vast majority of them have been rebuilt after the war because most of them were destroyed during World War II. More than it took to rebuild all of Europe is the funds that were received or sent to Gaza. But most of it went to these quote unquote leaders of Hamas living in 7-star hotels in Qatar and in Turkey.
Yeah, it reminds me of the 2021 Let's Go Brandon, where they were shouting something different, F somebody JB, where the reporter is saying, oh, listen what they're chanting. They're saying, let's go Brandon. And was not at all what was being reported. The reporter believed nobody could pick up actually what was being said, but it was clear as day. And it started the FJB movement that lasted a good year or so, where people kept saying that. That's the reporters trying to scrub or clean up what they're hoping isn't being heard. But yeah, this is the unspoken truth. The people just want to be fed. They don't want to be bombed. They don't want to be hurt. They just want to live their lives. They don't want to be any part of this. Their own leaders are the ones that are creating the problem and have a vested interest in doing so. And back to the point of how, unfortunately, when you change the narrative falsely, when you change the talking points, when you scrub what the truth is, then you have people really not understanding the true conflict, not understanding the true plight of the people that are being impacted by it. And then here in the United States, what have we been seeing? People being harassed because they're Jewish or because they're Israeli or because they believe in the state of Israel. It's like a common thing. I think for people certainly who maybe aren't Jewish, they may not realize how common it's become on the streets everywhere for people just to be harassed if someone looks at them and thinks that perhaps they're either supporting Israel or that they might be Jewish.
So you just mentioned something that I want to touch on more. You said that most of these people just want to live free and want to have a peaceful life. It's important to remember that on October 7th, there were 3 waves. The first was the Nukhba forces, which is like Hamas special forces. The second wave of about another 2,000 people was regular Hamas terrorists. But then the third wave were just Gazan population, right? The people of Gaza who, let's remember, voted for Hamas and voted for Hamas in the only democratic election they ever had, and supported Hamas until this war. And even now, when we're seeing these protests, quote unquote, against Hamas, they are protests against Hamas, but they're not protests against jihad and killing Jews. The people there have been brainwashed for many decades, and they are almost entirely radical Muslims, right? So they almost all support the eradication of the Jewish state and the killing of Jews. Many of the quote unquote honest, innocent civilians hosted hostages in their homes, hosted Hamas in their homes, rockets in their homes, etc. So even though obviously it's very important to differentiate between fighters versus combatants and non-combatants, it is important to remember that these non-combatants overall greatly support the murder of innocent Jews and innocent people and innocent Christians all over the world. So I just wanted to make that differentiation because it is important for people to realize that this isn't peace-loving people that were conquered by Hamas. No, these people elected Hamas and they love Hamas. And they did love Hamas until the war started, and now they want to replace Hamas, but they don't want to replace jihad. That is something that's very important to remember, at least the vast majority of them.
I think the problem is when you're brought up with a certain belief system,
exactly,
a certain ideology. Okay, so I accept that. I just know that it's not everybody. That's the reality. Not every single person.
Of course.
Perhaps the majority is of that mindset. And there's a reason why all the other Arab countries, even neighboring Egypt, has put up all kinds of walls and barriers, and they're not letting refugees. They've opposed, not just recently, they've never really wanted to have anyone that's identifying as Palestinian going into their countries or emigrating or going as a refugee or what have you. So it's quite odd that people here in the United States are like, oh, in Israel, this and Israel. What about all these other Arab countries, which is the majority in the area? What have they done to help? What have they done to allow people to leave? People should be allowed to openly leave if it's an area they're not comfortable being in. And now Gaza's been decimated. People should be allowed to go somewhere else. None of these countries really want to take them. There's
not
a
even take them. They don't even want to let them through. And
there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason for that. So
stay
yeah,
there.
I won't say what the reason is, but there's a reason for that. Obviously, you could read between the lines. There's obviously something going on that isn't being really discussed. And that's why there's no peaceful resolution unless you fix the underlying problem. You can't be living, if you hate your neighbor, something's you gotta give. You can't just keep living that way. Look, like we were talking about here in the United States, I think the next clip has an example in Los Angeles. People just doing their own thing, minding their own business, just to show. I think it's just more to make the point of what some individuals are going through just for living their lives and being, like I said, either Jewish or supportive of the Jewish state. No more than that. Here he goes.
For my TikTok, buddy. I know, buddy. We need a quick question, buddy. What's your stance on Israel, buddy? What's your stance on Israel?
Israel is the best country.
Fuck Israel. Fuck everything about Israel, buddy. Free Palestine, buddy. Look how I smelled you. I smelled a rat. I smelled IDF Israelis. You could smell them. They smell like shit. They smell like baby killers. Look at them. Look at the baby killers. With these baby killers. You touch my phone, I'm gonna hit you, bro. You touch my phone, I'm gonna hit you. Any extension on my body, buddy. Hey, I'm not your friend, you Zionist bitch. Fuck you, you fucking Zionist. Let's fight, buddy. You wanna fight or what? You wanna fight or what? I fucking can't stand Israelis. See how I smelled your ass, bro? From far away. I smelled you, bro. I smelled you. You smell like a baby killer, you especially. No. You smell like a baby killer, Israeli. Where were you born, buddy? Fuck you. Peace killing babies? No. What's the peace, buddy? What's the peace? Where's the peace, buddy? Yeah, get out of here. Get out of Los Angeles. Israelis are not welcome here. Get out of here. Get out of Hollywood. You're not welcome here. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So I have a question to you. We are told that Israel is a nation of European colonizers who came from Europe to colonize the innocent people of the land that was called Palestine under the British. Do these people look like European colonizers to you?
Not particularly.
They look Middle Eastern. And that's something that's very important to remember, is that the vast majority of Israelis, not the vast, but the majority of Israelis are actually of descent from Jews who lived and suffered in Arab countries and Islamic countries. So most Israelis are not Europeans, yet all of Israel is considered a colonizing state. And Zionism is considered the last project of colonialism, even though it's the exact opposite. It's decolonialism, because under the initial Islamic, when the Muslims came out of Arabia, the Arabs came from Arabia, like Yemen and southern Saudi Arabia, and they started to conquer the area called the Levant, which is where Israel is. They are the conquerors, right? They are the ones who invaded the land, and they are the colonizers. Whereas the Jews who returned from many Arab countries around the area and from European countries and from all over the world, they are decolonizers. They speak the same language, same religion as the people who were expelled from there, yet small communities remain throughout time, like we said.
Yeah, no, totally. And the reality is that people are being harassed just for being who they are. That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be because of the color of your skin, your religion, or what country your ancestors were from. None of that should happen to anybody. And it's not unique. That isn't just Los Angeles. Just to show the broad scope of this, here's another clip from Montreal, Canada, okay, which is a pretty liberal country, somewhat socialistic. And again, there's been this sort of thing. It's if you support Israel there, now suddenly that's somehow a problem. Watch what happens to these folks.
Are you here for the fundraise? Fundraise for IOF criminals? Are you here for that? Aren't you ashamed? Aren't you ashamed? 20,000 kids got butchered. 20,000. Are you ashamed? No, you're not ashamed.
And both these videos are from the 7th of October social media platform, and they cover a lot of this stuff. It's just like you can't go anywhere. People are just being harassed, just walking down the street, going to an event like this. The other ones in Los Angeles were just obviously at a theater, mall, whatever. They're not doing anything particularly, they're not in the middle of a protest. They're not being activists. They're just going.
She was making a heart, right? One side is making a heart, all about love, and then the other is just attacking and attacking. And anybody who wants to know more about what's been going on in terms of Islamism in Montreal specifically, but in Canada in general, I recommend listening to Gazans. He's a brilliant psychologist, and he does phenomenal kind of analysis of the mind viruses that have been contaging many parts of the West.
Yeah, and that's the theme, or kind of what we're talking about. It's just that people have been led to think a certain way, not even to be like middle of the road and you can have a difference of opinion. There's a large number of people that are so anti-Israel right now. And the foundation for their hate is just not rooted in reality or on history or anything else. what's
The
interesting,
foundation of their hate is probably anti-Semitism, which has been a scourge for thousands of years. Some people try and say anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. At the end of the day, you hate the only Jewish state by the fact that it is a Jewish state, and you hold it up to standards that you don't hold any other state. Russia is conducting war. There are wars going on all over. Wars have been happening throughout all of history. Israel tends to treat people better than in any of these other countries in any of these other wars, but it's not judged objectively. It's judged by this moral standard of, if you're not perfect, and war is never perfect. Nobody is ever perfect in war. But if you're not perfect, then you're evil and you're the worst of everything. So the only explanation eventually is like anti-Semitism. People just hate Jews. There are historical reasons for that, and for great analysis, like we mentioned, Godside does a great job kind of analyzing those mind viruses.
sure does. But I think it's a little different. I think maybe there's similarities, but there's differences. I think with social media and the easy way of disseminating information now, people are getting false narratives. If you heard what one of those guys was saying, he was baby killer, this, that. Does this guy not realize what happened on October 7th? This was like horrific things that were done to people: raped, killed, burned alive. Pregnant woman had a baby removed from her while she was still alive. It's just, what? And they're pointing the finger at them. And because people are being led to believe that somehow Israel, which actually has people from all faiths and all countries and all this stuff living actually in peace together, that somehow they're doing atrocities onto everyone else. And the narrative isn't based on reality. That's the thing, but people are believing it. And I think it potentially could get worse with all this AI now and everything that can be done. People might start seeing stories that are completely fabricated. So we'll have to see where it goes, but I think people need—
They already are. We've seen a lot of images go viral about Gaza, and they were actually taken from the Syrian civil war. A lot of these images come from Iraq or different wars elsewhere, and they get pictured as the situation in Gaza. It is important to remember, children are dying in Gaza, and it's devastating. Anytime a child dies, it's heartbreaking. But what's important to remember is the intention, right? One side, like you said, on October 7th, went there to massacre, to murder children. They literally burnt children, babies alive, stuff like that, right? Whereas the other side is, yes, children die. When you drop bombs, children will die, but they take precautions like no other nation and no other military has taken ever in human history to avoid that to the extent possible. But the extent possible is limited by the fact that the terrorists abuse our morality and use it against us, right? Because they know we try and avoid bombing mosques or schools or churches or whatever, hospitals, that's what they use as their command center. Israel just annihilated Mohammed Sinwar's brother, who was in charge of the October 7th and who is the current leader of Hamas, in a hospital, right? And everybody says Israel attacks hospitals because Hamas is using hospitals. But then when you drop a bomb on a hospital and children die, everybody's going to blame Israel, when in reality, it's against the laws of war for Hamas to use the hospital as a base of terror. And if it is used as a base of terror, Israel is allowed, according to the laws of war, to bomb that building. So they try and be as careful as possible. But when somebody tries to use your morality against you, it's important to recognize that, and then to stop using the moral argument in that scenario, because it's not equivalent. You're not fighting a war between two equivalently moral armies. That's not what's going on here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of this sort of mindset, people are getting concerned because there's an ever-growing population of individuals who are coming from other countries throughout the world, and the minorities are becoming majorities in some cities. Next clip is from Barcelona, Spain, where there's a gentleman just going through the crowd, and take a look. Is this what you'd expect Barcelona to look at? It's really just a question. Here we go.
Bueno, esto también es Barcelona. Multicultural.
And that's the Chilean Mate social media channel. I can tell you my family's from Portugal. Portugal looks pretty much the same right now too.
Yeah, so just for a little bit of context, these are Shia Muslims celebrating the Ashura the Ashura holiday. Shia is a minority of Islam. They're about 20%, but Iran is Shia. So these are all associated or fans of Khamenei, the leader of Iran. And what they do is they beat themselves to remember the suffering that Ali suffered in the hands of the early Muslims. This is like the nice version, because in Iran, they actually do it with like whips until they're all bleeding and the streets are basically flowing with blood. Yeah, very nice, friendly people. This is what they do to themselves. We recently saw a video out of Michigan where people are marching in the streets doing this as well. And the question is, if you want to do it in the mosques, do it in the mosques. Why are you doing that in the streets? And it's a show of dominance, a show of power.
And I saw the other videos you're referring to. We didn't want to put them on here, but ultimately, it's not that we're saying you can't practice your religion or your culture. That's not the issue. It's that entire cities are becoming, what the gentleman's saying in Spanish is that here we are in Barcelona, multiculturalism. He's obviously saying it tongue in cheek. He's just saying that, look, we don't have multiculturalism anymore. We have one other culture now, and it's not the original Spanish culture that's here in Barcelona. And
these people are not there to assimilate, they're there to conquer.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. We've brought this up in the past. People, my family immigrated. I immigrated from Canada here. The goal isn't to come and change another country. You want to blend in. You want to bring the good from your country, but you want to become part of the country. One of the things you definitely want to do is you want to be proud of the flag, proud of the values. Otherwise, why live there, right? We have Sweden, for example. We're not just saying it's Spain or just all over the world this is happening. So this is, I think, Stockholm. We have a clip from there just to give you an idea that the population is changing. It is. Whether you think it's good or bad, that's up to debate, but it definitely is recognizing these changes. Let's look at this.
This is a show of dominance. That's exactly what this is. A show of force and a show of dominance. They're trying to show we're here to stay and we are here to take control.
Yeah, and again, that's the real issue. People say, oh, you're being Islamophobic. Oh, that's not it. It's not about that. I'm of Portuguese descent and I lived in a Greek neighborhood. I wasn't complaining there were too many Greeks. It was okay. I love Greek food. I love the Greek culture. And I chose to be there. There's the difference. And again, the issue is that they were seeing this over and over again play out. The next clip actually paints a little bit of the picture. We know there was a really good soccer win in France, in Paris, and people were celebrating. And here's a crowd of people that are supposed to be celebrating, being happy, and what have you. And what do we see a clip of that the people are chanting? Maybe you could practice your French. I'm going to play it. Kind of look at it. But if you try to hear what they're saying, one of the words actually translates to English pretty good.
So obviously everybody knows that soccer is all about hating Israel, right? Because that's what soccer matches. Isn't it about kicking the Jewish head? No, I'm kidding, of course. Soccer is an awesome sport, but what we're seeing here is that for anybody unaware, Paris Saint-Germain, who's the Paris soccer team, they won, I think it was the World Cup, not the World Cup, but a huge victory, maybe the World Series or something, 5-0. And
they're an amazing team. They've come out of nowhere. They've become the rallying cry. And everyone is, just like here in the United States, we have soccer, baseball, football. It's great that people are together, but to see people in massive quantities basically saying F Israel over and over again, F free Palestine and F Israel.
Yeah.
For them to be shouting that and chanting that, I'm not quite sure what that has to do with sports. I mean,
sports is supposed to be apolitical, right? That's the whole idea, that you fight on the match and everybody gets along.
It's what's going on? What is this? And again, who knows if we went to those people individually and asked them to explain what their beliefs are and why, what they're rooted in, they probably couldn't tell you. Every time I've seen videos of people have a microphone put in front of them asking them, they can't explain. They go, I don't know anything about it. I don't know. I'm just trying to do the right thing and support the right side. And it's when you have a crowd of people like that shouting and chanting these things, it doesn't mean that every single person there completely understands what they're even chanting, but it certainly gets your attention. And
it's scary if you're a
Of course
Jew
it
and you're
is.
walking by and you see
Yeah,
these
exactly.
bastards trying to kill you and your nation.
Because and as we saw in the other clips, imagine those people walking through a crowd like that, just thinking, hey, I'm here to celebrate the win as well, and I'm into soccer and I think this is great. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the one walking there either. And
Do we have
just
additional clips of the riots that went on after the victory, or?
yeah, the celebrations, which AKA we would call them riots, but celebration. And what's really weird in a lot of places when they celebrate, we've had that happen in our country too. The quote unquote celebrations turn into some riots where they're burning things down, burning buildings down, burning cars. So we do have a bit of the aftermath of the celebrations of the victory, the soccer victory. Let's take a look at that.
Ouais, je suis en train d'arriver là.
Like
Yeah, it's
world?
this is one of the less scarier clips of the quote, unquote,
Intentionally, by
celebration. Yeah.
design, so we could post it and people could actually, the ones that are watching it could actually see it. We're trying to
It
be
just shows you Paris burning basically as part of the celebrations. But what's even more fearful is when you see the video of two white girls in a car surrounded by a mob trying to lynch, murder, and rape them. And I recently saw a video clip that compared the victory now versus some other soccer victory 20 or 30 years ago. And there it's people singing and dancing and having beers together and joyful and celebrating the victory, like we would think, right? And then here you see riots and destruction and death, and then chants of over 2 people were murdered in these quote unquote celebrations, these riots. But it's not a celebration of death. It's so if you read their responses, everybody's, especially responses in French, they're like, this is not the French. These are the intruders. These are the invaders. These are the migrants, right? These are the Muslims who've been led into the country in order to quote unquote have a better life, but instead are trying to make life worse for everybody here and to claim dominance and take control, right? So this is what it's really about. It has nothing to do with soccer. It's just an opportunity for them to show dominance and to riot and to murder and to basically tear the whole thing down. One of the things that makes France special is its protest. That's the French Revolution and everything. It brought us democracy. But here they're using these rights given to the people of France to protest, and instead they're using it to conquer. And that's what's really important to realize.
So because of what you mentioned, I sneakily pulled up another clip. It's not the worst one, but for anyone watching that just looked at that last clip and saw just a few things on fire and really not a big deal in France, let's look at this one.
So for anybody unfamiliar, Dr. Malouf is a phenomenal channel to follow on X and Instagram. I think maybe he's an ex-Muslim or just a modern Muslim, kind of UAE style, who's unradicalized, which unfortunately is the minority. But he's a phenomenal channel, and he posts a lot of really interesting content about what's actually going on in Europe. And yeah, like you said, this seems like a little bit of partying, mostly fireworks, and a whole bunch of rioting and just destruction. And I doubt it's really, they do this whether the team wins or loses. It's just an excuse, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not about this certainly isn't a celebration. It's not how anyone celebrates. And it just shows how things have gotten out of hand. And I think that's really the message. And like I said, that's not the worst of the videos. Okay, that's just Just to get a little more context, we put another one on there, but there's some we'd rather not put on, which just shows things are out of control and they seem to be getting worse year by year. And a lot of it has to do with the attitudes and perception of people, that they figure they can get away with it, that they can just do this.
Because they are.
And they are, for the most part, getting away with it. Absolutely. I think when you live in a country where the people are starting to resent the country based on falsehoods, I think that's a problem. If you're not happy there, leave. Don't try to burn the country down. That's just not the answer. Maybe there's a better place the person should be.
I think the most important point to recognize is the government or the leadership recognizing the problem and trying to resolve it and solve it, or are they letting it slide by? And earlier we mentioned Keir Starmer and his involvement with the grooming gangs in England. In this case, President Macron of France, he just announced that he wants to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. This is a prize to the rioters. And when you give them a prize, it only encourages them to riot even more. It only encourages them to be more violent. This is the prize to Hamas for committing October 7th. And if you give them a prize for doing it, they will want to commit it again and again, just like they say that they will, right? So even if Hamas is gone, then other radical Islamists around the world will continue this, right? So instead of trying to solve the problem, what Mr. Macron just announced, that he wants to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state along with the Prime Minister of Canada and the Prime Minister of England, these are things that are going to encourage the rioters, encourage the destruction of Europe, and encourage terror attacks against Jews and Israelis all over the world, and against Christians in many Arab countries, and against Israel as well. So instead of recognizing the problem, they're basically causing further problems. And that's what's even more worrisome. It seems like his wife maybe have an opinion on that, but we'll get to that at the happy ending.
Yeah, we do have something on that later. Yeah, no, I think that's the thing. Ultimately, it's important. You'd expect to live in a country where there's law and order and where people are expect to have a certain level of decorum, not to go around rioting and burning things down, so forth. And the next clip is it's actually a police stop, a traffic stop in Fairfax County, where they actually went and pulled this car over. I think the sticker on the tag was expired or what have you. And the individual, I believe, is 36-year-old refugee from Afghanistan, who gets pulled over. And look at his reaction. This was a minor traffic issue, would have been easily corrected, might have just gotten away with a warning. And he winds up, watch what happens, we'll discuss it. And there is a warning on the video that the content could be considered shocking or disturbing to some viewers.
That was a heck of a stop, sir. I have a gun and I'm armed, I'll let you know. So why did you pull me over? Your inspection sticker expired last... Yeah, they know. Call Joe Biden or call George Bush. Look, hey, I died when I was serving you, with you liars, with you people, with American status. I served as well, sir. Yeah. So you brought me to you people brought me to this goddamn country, and I'm dying every single day, and I have 4 children, and we wholly survive because you're a racist people. Okay. Subject keeps reaching for his weapon. No, I'm not reaching. Okay. So these are my partners here. They're coming up. I don't want you to get rattled, but it's because you were reaching for your weapon. No, I'm not reaching, sir. Hey, I watched you do it. I don't give a damn. Hey, so listen, American. Take it. I take this with you, okay? So now you want to give me that? Hey, don't you reach it? Listen, American. Take it. I take this with you, okay? Hey, don't you reach it? Take it. I take this with you, okay? So now you want to... Hey, don't you reach it? Hey, don't you reach it? You, okay? So now you want to give me that? Hey, don't you reach it?
So this happened April 23rd of this year. It's recent. And here's someone who apparently is a refugee, came to this country, was brought to this country, he says, yet clearly detests our country. And the first thing he says, he has a weapon. Last thing you'd want to do is reach for it. And what does he do? He hands a driver's license. Next thing you know, he goes and grabs his weapon while surrounded by police officers. What does he think is going to happen?
And it looks like he's actually trying to shoot them from that inside the vehicle. It actually looks like it.
Yeah, the second or third body cam, it shows he basically pulled it, drew the gun, and pointed it at the officer.
And one of the officers ran covering his hand.
Yeah.
It looked like he may
There's
have
at
been
least
shot
one that was. There were 2 officers that were shot. They were transported, and apparently they're okay. That's the story. But it's. Look, the point is, this could be, you could say it's an isolated event, one individual. It just, again, speaks to the idea that if you have people that are coming to our country, no matter what the status was, and they talk like he does, basically hating this country, hating that he's here. I don't think they dragged them over here and forced them to come. Okay. And I'm sure there's all kinds of things that he got offered to him to facilitate him transitioning to living here. And he's feels like, I don't know, entitled, what have you, that he could act whichever way he wants. And then again, mind-boggling, draws a weapon on not just one police, he's surrounded by police and he draws a weapon. There's only one possible outcome to that. So again, it speaks to what are people thinking? It's
if he believes that he is now going to heaven to his 72 virgins and that his family will be taken care of by the Islamist community and that he's dying a martyr for God, then he's fine with it. This is the problem, is that we have Western societies appreciate life, and Islamic societies openly and glorify death. Not all Muslims, but most Islamist societies glorify death. And this is something we have very loyal fan base in the Philippines. Shout out to them. And in the Philippines, there have been people say that all of the terrorism is because European colonialism and because America supports Israel and et cetera, et cetera. The Philippines are not Europeans. They're not colonists. They don't support, they're not Israel's closest allies. They don't arm Israel or anything to that effect. But people don't realize that there's ISIS in the southern islands of the Philippines. There are Islamist groups like Abu Sayyaf Group, ASG, and the Islamic Freedom Fighters, Bangsamoro, BIFF, and they in charge of displacement of over 350,000 people in the Philippines. They killed over 2,261 people. There's also the New People's Army, and like we mentioned in previous episodes, the Green Red Alliance, the Communist Party of the Philippines, and they're in charge of at least 284 deaths as recent as 2019. Even in 2023, there was a bombing in the Philippines by an pro-ISIS group. People say that this is Europeans, colonialism, Israel, blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with it. The Philippines have nothing to do with any of it, but they've been fighting, the Philippine army has been busy fighting ISIS and other terror groups because large islands in southern Philippines have very noticeable Muslim populations. And I've spoken to some people who live there, and they said that they grew up with the notion not to believe or not to trust these people, but now it's active war. And this has been going on for a bunch of years, but it's interesting how it gets no headlines, because if it's Jews, it's in the news. If it's not, it's a lot less newsworthy outside on the international stage, unfortunately.
Yeah, listen, I think part of what we're seeing, certainly here in the United States, is there are a lot of people who are being indoctrinated, if you want to use that word, or being led to believe falsehoods or one side of the story or a narrative. What are the next clips we want to share that we had talked about earlier is this Harvard University clip. And they have all these free Gaza signs up and everything. But again, if you just look at this, I don't have any problem with anyone supporting anything. But it just almost seems like a very slanted one-way position that university students are taking. Let's look.
In this spirit, we call into the space all those who are not able to be present with us today. The indigenous people who have been displaced and removed, our people of...
How this has anything whatsoever to do with education, with Harvard, with studying, with graduating, celebrating the completion of your studies. So unless you took a course in radicalization and incitement to jihadism, I don't understand how this can be how this can have anything to do with a Harvard graduation. Just how is this related? How are Palestinian flags, pro-jihad chants, in what seems like a church, because it seems like there's a cross on the wall. How does that have, first of all, that's a disgrace to Christianity, not disgrace of Christianity, but it's a disrespect to Christianity. And like, how does this have anything to do with education and freedom of knowledge and freedom of discourse? Like, there's a reason the Trump administration is going after Harvard. Unfortunately, a lot of it gets categorized because of anti-Semitism. Like we saw here, there's a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism in Harvard. It's not just about that. There are a whole bunch of other categories. I don't like that it's being categorized as going after anti-Semitism, because then the Jews end up getting blamed either way. If it succeeds or if it fails, the Jews are to blame. So I prefer the public taxpayers should not be funding this regardless. And this is incitement and should be recognized as that.
Yeah, Harvard has a huge endowment. They're not hurting for money. The idea that they're getting tax dollars in massive quantities is insane. And again, for those that didn't see the video side of our podcast, they're dressed in gowns and caps. It's the graduation attire that they have. That's why it doesn't mean that there's no place to say or do the things they're doing. It just seems out of place that you have a bunch of people in grad attire, basically doing some sort of pro-Palestinian / anti-Israel rally. It seems that's what they're doing. And look, I think it again speaks back to this sort of thing, the concern that there's this growing sort of creeping in of this narrative. The next clip talks about something that is described as the thing. Let's listen to what that means.
This one is going to be heavy. I want to talk with you all about the thing. The thing that should be on everybody's mind right now. It surrounds us, is ever growing, and hates every fabric of our being. It is now a crime to oppose the thing that facilitated and excused the systematic raping of tens of thousands of young British girls, murdering tourists in India, journalists in France, Christians in Nigeria and the Congo, Druze in Syria, Jews in Israel. The list goes on. Don't take my word for it, take theirs. We are told we must accept the thing being welcomed into our neighbourhoods and our towns, from London to Manchester, Melbourne to Montreal. With just basic understanding of the thing and all of its teachings, it is impossible not to view this as suicidal empathy. Suicidal empathy, born of gross levels of comfort and complacency never seen before in human history. What is coming will paralyze the vast majority of free society if we do not act now. We live with the illusion of peace, that is all.
From some Yahud. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I just realized Yahud is the way Muslims call Jews. So Sami Yahud, maybe Sami the Jew, I don't know. It's a play on that. But yeah, that message is really important. And what's even more important is the fact that he's calling it the thing. And the fact that in many of the other episodes, we try and avoid discussing the thing because we know that the episode will get demonetized and the algorithm won't pick it up and won't show it to viewers if we discuss the thing. It's scary. It's scary the way the algorithm is treated. It's scary the way it's trying to conquer our cities from all over the world. Like we said, all over Europe. Like we said, in Texas, there are hundreds of mosques, and they're now building Muslim cities that are basically restricted to Muslims only, even though they can't. They basically make that most of the money goes to the local mosque. And, why, if you're a normal person, why would you live there and pay huge property taxes if 20 or 30% go to the mosque? And then that gets funneled either to terrorism or to charity to other Muslims and stuff. So they have all these games that they play, and there are videos of them actually explaining their tactics of how to make these basically Muslim-only cities. And they're trying to do it all over Texas and Michigan and all over the US, but like we just mentioned earlier, even the Philippines, right? Even Southeast Asia. So it's just a problem, and the world really has to wake up really soon.
There's been a lot of focus on deportations and change in immigration policy. And the reality is this isn't just about a particular group of people or whatever. The issue is that a lot of people who've come to the country are unvetted. When you become a US citizen, when you're applying for naturalization, as I did, you're asked a number of questions. You're supposed to obviously state that you have an interest in the United States and upholding the laws and so forth of the country. We wonder how many people are here now who have never been asked. They weren't vetted. And this is nothing new. The next clip has President Barack Obama talking about what has he been called?
Barack Hussein Obama, because that's his middle name.
The deporter in chief. Because he's historically known for having deported, really honestly, more individuals than a lot, certainly on the Democrat side, from our country. He was deporting a lot of people, and we talked a little bit about earlier how some of the numbers might have been skewed, but he certainly was known as big into deportations and so forth. And the next clip basically has current day apprehensions going on in the background, and they have a cutout of him speaking. But just look at this, okay? And then listen to his words, to Barack Obama's words.
If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only lawful, they're the kinds of actions taken by every single Republican president and every single Democratic president for the past half-century. And to those members of Congress who question my authority to make our immigration system work better, or question the wisdom of me acting where Congress has failed, I have one answer. Pass a bill.
And that's from the Instagram Spot On 01 channel. Again, this isn't a partisan issue, right?
It wasn't until woke took over the Democratic Party. Barack Obama was a Democrat and Biden was his vice president. But by the time Biden became president, the woke mind virus and the Trump derangement syndrome became so extreme, and the Democratic Party shifted so far left, became so radicalized that suddenly literally paying for flights to import criminal illegal aliens was what the US was spending government on, instead of helping vets who struggle with PTSD and live on the streets. It's just devastating.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's all about the vetting and understanding who's coming here. There are people who hate other people for no good reason, but they do it. We have a clip that basically shows two people interacting, and you see how quickly a very cordial interaction turns to hate by one of them simply because he finds out who the other person is or what their heritage is. Watch.
Yeah, bro.
What up? Everything's okay?
Where from?
Can I sing you a song and then I'll tell you where I'm from?
Yeah, bro. Take your time.
Okay. أنا لا جاي أقول لك ارجع اسمع علشان أنا صبري قليل كل مرة تهرب أقرب على إيه أنت مسهرني الليل حبيبي روحي عمري عقلي عليك يلي حبك أنت مغلبني معذبني مرويني الويل
جامد نيك.
You like it?
أنت منين؟
I don't speak Arabic.
From where يعني اخلص.
Oh, you ask where I'm from? I live in Los Angeles.
Yeah, bro.
I live in Los Angeles, but I'm from Israel.
Are you Israeli?
Yes.
Say wallah.
Wallah. Why like this? Why? But you just like the song. Why you be...
So for those that didn't see, of course, everything's beeped out, but he's giving the middle finger and is obviously swearing at him, and suddenly finds out he's Israeli, and that changed everything.
He wants to kill him. So here's the thing. I have a Muslim friend who tells me that Egypt is controlled by the Mossad, which is a ridiculous proposition, of course. In fact, the Egyptian army has been preparing its army to attack Israel eventually, which we hope never happens because there has been this peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. But it is important to remember that unlike the recent peace agreement between Israel and some other countries, where that is true peace, true friendship, real love, actually. It's phenomenal and really beautiful. And I think the United Arab Emirates is a phenomenal example of what moderate Islam could be. And it's just beautiful and successful and wonderful. And Islam has so many beautiful cultures and traditions and history, and the food is phenomenal and the people are nice. And unless you're a woman, let's just say that. But in general, there are so many beautiful parts to Islamic culture, but Islam has to get rid of the radicalization. And with the UAE, they did that before they signed the peace agreement with Israel. We've seen even Saudi Arabia change the education books. But in Egypt, even though there was this cold peace agreement signed after the Yom Kippur War between Israel and Egypt, so there's technically a peace agreement, it isn't peace. It is a ceasefire, right? In reality, it's a ceasefire that's lasted and been holding because Israel is strong. But the education system never changed. So 110 million Egyptians have been radicalized for the last 50, 100 years to hate Israel and to hate Jews. And this man in the video was Egyptian. It's just vehement. People don't realize, but Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, right? My Struggle, is the most popular selling book in Egypt, right? Like Islamism is on the rise, even though the Egyptian government, Mohammed Morsi, is fighting the Muslim Brotherhood because they're a threat to his power. He still partnered with Hamas to allow all the weapons to flow into Gaza. So it's like, the people of Egypt, even though there is a cold peace agreement, the people of Egypt hate Israel because the brainwashing never stopped. The education system was never fixed. And Mein Kampf was never removed from the bookshelves. Or I'm for free speech. Maybe it has a place on the bookshelves, but it definitely shouldn't be the most popular book in a country because that is the telltales that is an anti-Semitic country, right? There's no other way around it, don't you think?
I agree. And again, that's the issue. It's about balanced speech so people can at least hear the different arguments and that there be allowed a voice of opposition to something that seems improper. That's really why I look at it. Okay. I don't think we want to bury the past, or hide anyone's voice. Let them say whatever crazy things they want to say. But there should be an opportunity for people to push back and give the other side as to what the issue is. And I think that's part of the problem. When people start bringing things up, they go, oh, you're Islamophobic, or you're this, or you're that, or you're racist. Fill in the blank. There's something that's thrown at the people trying to just say, look, we have questions or concerns about some of these things that are being taught or being explained. A prime example is our next clip with Bill Maher. Bill's an old school Democrat. He's certainly not a Trump loyalist supporter. He's definitely not MAGA. I think he's middle of the road. In many ways represents the majority of Americans. That he is somewhat centered. He's left of center, but not by much. And he uses common sense with most things. And up until his recent visit to the White House, I think he really didn't particularly like Trump. I think now he may not agree with him, but at least he has a certain respect that he gained from actually meeting him and not just hearing about him. But let's see what he has to say about this and how the ability to speak up and voice dissent or concern, how that's important and you shouldn't be labeled because you're doing that. Here we go.
Yasmin Mohammed is a human rights activist who got married off to a Muslim man with fundamentalist views about women, not exactly uncommon in the Muslim world. He forced her to wear the niqab all the time, including once beating her because she took her hijab off at home because the apartment had a window through which people might see in. And this was in Vancouver. Here's what Yasmin said about veiling. It just suppresses your humanity entirely. It's like a portable sensory deprivation chamber, and you are no longer connected to humanity. You can't see properly. You can't hear properly. You can't speak properly. People can't see you. You can only see them. Just little things, passing people on the street and just making eye contact and smiling, that's gone. You're no longer part of this world, and so you very quickly just shrivel up into nothing under there. And that's my answer when someone says Islamophobe.
Credit to Yasmin Mohammed. We quoted her in the past. She is a phenomenal source on the topic. I recommend everybody to give her a follow. But also Bill Maher. This topic has come up a bunch of times on his podcast, and he really sees straightforwards, and he's not confused, and he's not distracted by all the woke agenda and all the other crazy, even the right-wing, anti-Semitic wing that's been blowing up recently. He really is, like you said, he's a center. He represents the majority of Americans, even if he is slightly left of center. And on this topic, he's really been point blank right there on the target. Respect to Bill Maher on that.
Yeah, and he makes the point. It's okay to call out things that you have to take issue with. He takes issue, and here's a Muslim woman taking issue with her own cultural norms. And again, she should be able to have that voice, and people can say, no, you choose to not conform or what have you, but there are people who do and view it differently. But the voice should be allowed to be heard. And I think that's the main thing. And I think just like that clip before where we had one gentleman basically playing a beautiful song on piano, which was being very well taken,
of his culture, it's an Egyptian song loved by the Egyptians, right? This is like a cultural thing saying, hey, my heart goes out to you. I'll play a song of your culture for you, and I'll sing in Arabic for you, even though I don't speak the language.
But yet that didn't matter. The moment that they found out that the person offering the gift of music and compassion was Israeli, the next clip basically is also bringing together a voice of kind of love and just a reminder that at the end of the day, human beings across the world are being compartmentalized and are being restricted because they don't have their voice. And
it's important to remember, though, that Yasmin Mohammed, for what she does, for what she says, she is targeted violently, endlessly. There are people trying to assassinate her 100 times a day. She has to have close quarter protection, etc. Recently, we discussed, and we wanted to bring it on the podcast, but then because of all the censoring, we kind of delayed it. There's another ex-Muslim on the topic, or maybe she's still a Muslim. She's just very modern. Her name was, I think, Lubna something. And she was phenomenal. She was a phenomenal voice on the subject. And recently her family was threatened and nearly killed, and she decided that she will no longer discuss Islam. And this is how they win. They win by shutting people up through violence. And they do this every single day, every single time, and it doesn't get any headlines and nobody sees it. But they shut people up who dare to speak up and to show what's actually going on. And anybody who dares, especially people who were part of it and start talking about it, they just get violently threatened and beaten, and then most of them end up shutting up. So Yasmin Mohammed is super brave, and we all have to have huge respect for her and everybody else like her.
Absolutely. And I think anyone that brings forth a voice to speak their truth is important. Here's another one. This is at the United Arab Emirates Israeli Embassy.
So for anybody unfamiliar, that is the Israeli anthem, and it's sung by two Arab singers in the United Arab Emirates. And I think that this is the optimistic hope that we want to end the story on, is that even though most of the world is under threat by radical Islam, and people don't realize it, but most of the world is under threat by radical Islam. Like we said, Europe is basically being conquered as we speak. There is a hope, and the hope is unradicalized Islam. Because the default in Islam is radical Islam. So the unradicalized elements have to be empowered. And at the moment, there's one country at the forefront, but there are a few other moderate Islamic countries as well. And that country is the United Arab Emirates, where they removed all the hateful, it starts with removing all the hate from the education system and from the books. And then it comes to promoting love and care and friendship. And like we said, the friendship between the United Arab Emirates and Israel is true friendship. It's true care. And these are the Muslims we have to empower. And the really sad thing is that the Muslim Brotherhood and most of these terror organizations are outlawed and banned and being active fought against in most of these modernized Arab countries. Where is their funding coming from? Their funding is coming from London and Paris, from all the Muslims who moved there. So it's ridiculous, the situation where most of the funding for radical Islamic terrorism comes from Europe, not from Arab countries anymore. Pre-2001, pre-9/11, that wasn't the case. It was the exact opposite. But ever since 2001, most of these countries have liberalized and have started to actively fight the Muslim Brotherhood and radical Islam. And instead of that, the support for radical Islam is coming from Europe. And that's why we're trying to say it's really time for the West to wake up before it's too late, because in some countries in Europe, it basically already is. The hope is for countries like the United Arab Emirates who are willing to have a stage and sing the Israeli anthem. These amazing singers who sang it really beautifully, I may add.
Yeah, they did. And again, it's the reality is it's a song of hope, really. The anthem is a song of hope. And I think we lose sight of the fact that Israel geographically is a very tiny country, surrounded by countries that aren't necessarily always aligned to do the right things. And the next clip, trying always to inject some level of amusement in even the most gravest of realities, as you listen to the podcast and you hear what sounds like a slap, these are two cats that are depicting the realities in the Middle East. One cat is sitting there quietly as the other cat is inflicting various taps on its head and so forth. And it puts up with this. And on the video platforms, you'll see that we list all the attacks on Israel that Israel sustained and essentially tolerated without retaliation. And only at the very end does the second cat retaliate against the first cat. And again, that retaliation is labeled genocide. It's an interesting video that makes the point. I think sometimes if you take what goes on out of context, it's very easy to completely change the narrative falsely. So let's play that. And even a kitty cat at some point will have to retaliate. Listen, it's a great, quick, very quick history lesson. The things that have happened in that region, just by watching these two cats go at it, at least makes it more palatable. But that's the reality, right? Everyone focuses on the retaliation that Israel has had, and that despite all efforts, there are civilian casualties. The reality is, why is there no talk about all these things that have happened all these other years against Israel, that Israel has had to basically suck it up and just deal with?
Yeah, so in more recent memory, Hamas was obviously importing rockets produced by Iran through Egypt and shooting these rockets into Israel for the past decade and a half. And Israel was like basically expected to tolerate thousands of rockets landing on its citizens and not do anything in response. And anytime Israel wanted to do anything, the Western world immediately acted to stop it. And that's the issue, is the Western world has been fearful of radical Islam. And unless they wake up, there's no way to fix it. But for years and years, neighborhoods were just bombarded with rockets and it wouldn't make a headline anywhere. Like, what country would be fine with its people being hit by rockets and not retaliate, not do anything? And then once every 3 or 4 or 5 years, Israel would have a military operation and bomb Gaza to stop it. And then suddenly the world would jump up and try and stop Israel. And that's the duplicity, the evil duplicity in this whole story, I think.
Yeah, and I think to put the concern of broadly what's happening, what we've been discussing with unvetted migration and so forth, there's a great talk that was had at CPAC Hungary, which is the Conservative Action Conference. But it's a good talk. And I think it's important, regardless of anyone's political leanings, to hear the warnings coming out of that talk. And I'd like to play that to wrap up this sort of conversation as we move on to another topic shortly.
Earlier this week, the world watched in stunned silence as an invisible hand slapped the face of Emmanuel Macron. We wish him a fast recovery. Emmanuel Macron cast himself as the new torchbearer of the Palestinian liberation movement. But a far louder slap came with the publication of the French government's report on the infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood in France. The report showed that the Muslim Brotherhood is the gravest threat facing France, Belgium, Germany, Austria, Britain, and the entire Western world, including Australia, Canada, and the US. The danger lies not only in its fanatical ideology, one that seeks to suppress all other faiths and cultures and impose Sharia law upon all humanity, but also in its cunning. Its end game is identical to the one of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but it means defer. It conceals its intentions in velvet gloves. The authors of the French report are unequivocal. The Muslim Brotherhood does not seek dialogue with the state. It seeks to bypass it, weaken it, and ultimately replace it. Its strategy is simple: infiltrate Muslim communities, build alternative education institutions, establish unelected religious leadership, penetrate local government, unions, schools, cultural NGOs, and finally portray the state as a moral bankrupt, offering a pure and moral alternative. As Jamal Murad, a senior Brotherhood figure in Austria, openly declared, we do not engage in social work unless there is a clear political objective behind it. At such a critical moment, we need more than ever leadership with moral clarity and courage. In recent years, we are seeing such leaders emerging in Europe, in Spain with our friends at Vox, in France with our friends from the Rassemblement National, the Netherlands, Poland, many of them present here today, leaders of parties and groups who understand the danger we are facing. Viktor Orban is a prominent example of such leader. The Hungarian government is paving the way for the rest of Europe with leadership that is willing to confront Islamic fanaticism and woke ideological extremism threatening the fabric of free society.
So this is Amichai Shikli. He's the Minister of the Diaspora in the Israeli government, so he is an Israeli politician. But what he says in this case is definitely on point. It is important to understand that Hungary, while very straightforward in terms of supporting Israel and not going along with the ICJ court ruling to arrest Netanyahu, Viktor Orban recently invited Netanyahu to there, and Hungary actually withdrew from the ICJ in order to host Netanyahu, and that's a very brave thing to do. It is important to understand that it recently was released that something Khan, who was the lead prosecutor in the name of South Africa, which is a genocidal state, actually a genocidal state, unfortunately. And we just saw that last week with Ramaphosa in the White House. But this Khan guy, who's the lead investigator, he was recently, it turned out that he raped his assistant, and he used blackmail against her, saying that if she dares go to the public and testify against him, it will help the Israeli cause, and it would hurt the Palestinians, and therefore he has to take his rape and shut up about it. And the timing of this whole ICJ ruling that decided to arrest Netanyahu and Gallant, the timing wasn't a coincidence. It was just on time for him when he needed to start covering up his personal sins. And this guy is a Muslim. This ICJ, supposedly an international court for justice, is not about justice if the prosecutor is a radical Islamist. And that's the case scenario. And it's not okay when he's also a rapist, and then he uses his hatred for Israel as blackmail. First of all, releasing this in order to distract from his own sins, and then he uses it as a blackmail to try and shut up his rape victim about it. So yeah, it's a problem, unfortunately, and congrats to Viktor Orban on leaving the ICJ for that. But I don't necessarily agree with everything Hungary is doing on the Russian front. They're cozying up to Putin, and I don't think that that's a smart or a correct morally thing to do.
I agree with it. And I think as we move on to our next topic, we always like sandwiching in a little bit of relief. So let's transition over to a comedy clip talking a little bit about the relationship between Jews and Muslims.
Muslims? We have Muslims here?
Yes, of course we have. I'm from Turkey. Do you remember me?
If I remember you? I have to remember you? You're from Turkey? You came to this Funny Monday show maybe? Okay. And you're Muslim? Now, first of all, marhaba. صح عليك. רגע, תן לי להשוויץ. תפאדל, welcome. Islam is the language with the most blessing. This is the language with the most blessing. Am I right, my friend? I don't know. So say yes. What do you care? What's the point of? They're gonna find you outside. You were wrong. It's not. No one cares. Lie. No Muslim have a problem to lie. Lie. Help. So. It's the most blessing language. And also the most violent at the same time. And I love that you guys don't drink alcohol. I love it, my friend. This guy's not helping the show at all. I love in general that Muslims not allowed to drink alcohol. Because you can imagine. What we're facing now is without the alcohol.
I know you hadn't seen that, so I know.
No, I didn't. This is hysterical.
So that's Yohei Sponder. He actually has gigs. He has gigs in the United States. This was, I think, an Israeli comedy show. But listen, you have to be able to poke fun at things, even yourselves, right? He was trying to make a point that wasn't getting a lot of help from his audience member there.
It's hysterical. Marhaba is welcome, and it was just really funny the way he handled that. And yeah, it is a good point. Imagine alcohol tends to make people more riled up and more violent. So we can only try to imagine what Islam would be with alcohol.
That's right. We wouldn't want to have drunk terrorists. It's even worse. But yeah, listen, again, that's the beauty of comedies. We've discussed in previous episodes that you've brought up how you can talk about topics and still talk about them that otherwise maybe you wouldn't be able to even approach.
You know what they say? Don't drink and drive. Drink and wear a suicide vest and blow up the bus and fly.
That's right. Listen, I think we need to move on from this, and let's talk about something much more positive. Certainly, you did some traveling recently, right? And you went and visited a very unique place that I've been before, but it's been transformed since the last time I've been there. And we're talking about now what is StarBase. I want to talk a little bit about it. I know we have some pictures that you took while being there.
Yeah, I think it's a true inspiration. I think when
we should tell people what this is, that people might not have a clue what we're talking about.
Yeah, StarBase, until recently known as Boca Chica Village, is a location near Brownsville, Texas, in the very, very south of Texas, very close to South Padre Island on the beach. And it is where SpaceX is building the most marvelous machine in all of human history. It's the largest machine ever built, the largest flying object ever, called Starship. Booster is the bottom part, and then the Starship is the upper part. And together, they're also called Starship. It is much larger than the Saturn V. So people say, hey, how come the US went to the moon years ago, but we've never returned? And the reason is because the Saturn V, which was the rocket that the United States built after World War II, thanks to some of the Nazi scientists, we decommissioned that for the space shuttle, but the space shuttle couldn't go that far. And so for the last 70 years, basically, or 50 years, we haven't returned anywhere aside from low Earth orbit because we literally didn't have the capability to do. Finally, SpaceX is building. This is like drastically larger than the Statue of Liberty. It's about 35 stories tall, and that's without the booster it's standing on. So in reality, it's probably about 40 stories tall. And the marvelous thing is that you can actually, it's on a public highway, so you can literally drive right up and stand like 300 feet away from the most powerful rocket in all of human history. It's also military technology, right? Because just the inherence of being a rocket technology. It is over 2.5 times as powerful as the most powerful rocket humans have ever created before, which is the Saturn V. So it's over 2.5 times. And this is like the baby Starship because Elon recently mentioned that the newer versions are going to get much larger and much taller. The silver part on the bottom, that's called the booster. It's mostly about 70 to 80% liquid oxygen. You have to liquefy oxygen, which means you have to freeze it to like minus 300 or 400 degrees in order for it to become liquid, in order to pressurize it to fit in there. And then it's liquid methane. Basically, no rockets were made with liquid methane before. And then here they also did something called a full flow combustion engine or something, which basically means that none of the fuel is wasted, unlike the vast majority of rocket engines in all of history. Too bad we don't have a picture, but there are pictures of the original rockets, the original engines of the Starship, and now the newer versions. And the amount of complexity in the version 1 is just mind-boggling because of how powerful these engines are. In the bottom, in the booster, there are 33 engines. In the top, there are currently 6, but soon there will be 9 engines. That's in the Starship itself. So the black part, what we see as a black part, that's all heat shield. That's all heat shield tiles. The other side of it is silver. So sometimes you'll see it from the other side. It will look like an all stainless steel rocket, even though some of the heat shields kind of spill over the opposite side. And yeah, it's truly marvelous, the power. So we got really lucky because people fly in to see launches, and they fly in once and then it gets delayed, and they fly in twice and it gets delayed, and it takes them their 4th time to see it. But we got really lucky. We had literally just arrived, and the day before we went and we took these pictures. It's phenomenal because you get to go out to a fairly beautiful beach, aside from the fact that there were these oil spill type of things. They're not from the rocket because the rocket uses methane and not oil, these tar balls. But it is a very beautiful beach and nice people hanging out there, and you can literally just turn around and this thing right behind you, 40 stories tall, with the most powerful rocket in all of human history. And then the very next day, we went to South Padre Island, and we were able to feel the launch. We watched the launch too, but much more impressively is what you feel. And that's what you miss when watching a video of it. So if you look at this image, there are these chopsticks, basically, these 2 little hands sticking up at the top. And what those do is those are there to enable catching the rockets. So back about 10 years ago, SpaceX for the very first time was able to catch the Falcon 9. And that's their kind of a workhorse of a rocket, which is tiny in comparison to this, even though it's a huge rocket. And I remember after that happened, there was like, okay, Lockheed, Boeing, ULA, the Europeans, the ESA, the European Space Association, the JAXA, which is the Japanese, the Chinese, they'll all be catching rockets, because using a rocket and discarding it, which is what humans have done throughout all of human history, and which is why rocketry has been so super expensive, is ridiculous. It's like taking a flight and then discarding the plane, right? Flying would be ridiculously expensive if you had to discard the plane every single time. But because you can rapidly reuse it, it parks, people leave, people get on, it's refueled, and boom, it goes again. That's how human air flight is so affordable. So what SpaceX is trying to do is turn space flight into the same thing. But in order to do that, you have to make rockets reusable. And that was considered impossible. It was all professionals said that was impossible. But Elon has this physics first approach, where unless physics dictates, the laws of physics dictate that it's impossible, it is possible and it can be done. So let's do it. And they had to make these marvelous engines. And they literally started off, typically rockets, especially these military missiles, are built in basically clean rooms, right? Like laboratory settings, because any speck of dust can be a problem. And they're like the most gentle machines on Earth. Even though they're super powerful, they're very gentle and have to be assembled very cleanly. Whereas Elon was like, wait, if we want this to land on Mars and refuel on Mars, it's got to be able to survive a Texan desert. So he started building, he was like, hey, anybody who specializes in welding water towers, because what they started with, Starhopper, and I'm not sure if I send you a picture of it, but Starhopper is right nearby. You can actually look at both of them at the same time. And it's basically this little water tower that they made to take off and land. And that was the prototype 6 years ago. So within 6 years, they went from a tiny little water tower that can take off and land to the most marvelous machine in all of human history. And they literally built it in the desert, originally in a tent, before they built the new factory. There's the earlier factory, but now they have this beautiful new factory. The top part, like we said, is Starship. And if you realize there's there's like a band right in between the two, that's kind of like a silver band with holes. And that's because what a brand new thing SpaceX has done before anybody else. Sorry, just to go back then, I expected that within a year or two, competitors would catch up and start catching missile rockets too, in order to reuse them, right? Because it's so obvious that once it's done, it's okay, everybody's got to follow suit. But it's been 10 years, and not only has nobody successfully caught another rocket, nobody has ever even attempted catching another rocket. And that's just puts things even more into perspective. So on Falcon 9, which is the current rocket, it has folding legs that fold out in order for it to land. And what's really crazy is that it lands on a drone ship many times. Sometimes it lands back on base if it isn't going very far, or if it doesn't have to push the payload, the satellites, to far orbit. But when it is going to far orbit, it'll actually land on a drone ship. And it's like the missile is basically a robot because it controls itself. The payload of satellites, those are basically a robot. And then it lands on a drone ship, which is a robot. And it's like a robot takes off, goes to space, drops other robots off in space, then returns to Earth and lands on a robotic ship. And the coolest part is, in order to stabilize it after it lands, they have this little small robot that's pretty heavy that comes to the bottom and literally grabs it to stabilize it, because the ocean could be a rocky place. I remember 10 years ago waiting for the competition to catch up, and everybody was like, oh, 2 months the competition is going to catch up. I was like, let's give them a few years. But it's been a decade and nobody's even attempted it yet. That just shows how complex rocket science is, specifically such advanced rocket science. With this one, the feat for a rocket so humongous, so big, so heavy, basically it's impossible to build feet that can carry so much weight, that can fold up and down, and it was going to be a real big problem. So what they said is, hey, let's build these chopsticks into towers and then have these chopsticks plug the rocket out midair. And that's literally what happened. Unfortunately, on this launch, this is actually what's remarkable about this launch, is that it's already a reuse. Even though this is a very early testing phase of the Starship rocket, this is already a reuse of the booster. So this is the second time this booster has successfully launched. And one of the engines inside is actually its third use. And but this time, because it was a reuse, they wanted to, and because they advance so quickly, by the time they get approval to launch this, internally they already have 5 or 10 versions ahead, right? So they're already 5 or 10 versions ahead, and they really just want to get to the more developed, more advanced rockets to test them as well. So they decided to eliminate this one and to push it to its limit. So as the booster was returning to Earth, they really used aerodynamical movements to try and see where the limit is, because the best way to figure out what something's limit is to really push it to the limit and see where it breaks, and that's where the actual limit is. So that's what they did in this case. And unfortunately, we were busy looking at the sky and we missed, because everybody was looking on the side, and suddenly everybody went, and we're like, wait, what happened? And they all saw a huge explosion in the sky, and then it takes about 5 minutes for this sonic boom to just blast you off your pants. And yeah, it's a remarkable experience. Recommend everybody at least once go and watch these launch, and in future launches and previous launches as well, you can actually watch it get caught. And when it comes back to get caught, it actually breaks the sound barrier a bunch of times, so you get to hear the sonic booms. It's, like I said, it's less to watch and more to feel and experience, but it is one hell of a thing to experience. And I think if you have children, there's nothing more inspiring for them than to see something like this. And what's really important about this rocket is twofold: making life multiplanetary, and we'll get back to that soon, but more importantly is point-to-point travel on Earth. So because this is basically a ballistic missile that can leave and enter atmosphere reliably and safely, the top part uses this really unique belly flop maneuver, where it uses the atmosphere to belly flop off it to slow down, which is completely unique as well and very fascinating. But soon, these things can travel anywhere on Earth within 45 minutes or less. Because if you look at the International Space Station, it orbits Earth every 90 minutes. So if you want to get to any point on Earth within 45 minutes, you can get there. So within probably a few years, maybe 10, let's just say, to be safe, we will be able to fly on these. Now, because they're reusable, the price is basically the price of fuel. And we're going to get much more technical in future episodes, because this is the most marvelous technology in the world. But because we're pressed for time here, we'll keep it short. It is marvelous and beautiful, and it's an experience that everybody should watch. Joe, I hope you come soon and we can go together to watch it. That would be really cool. I plan on going sometime soon again to watch another one of these launches. I think it really is a must experience for everyone. And like we said, eventually we'll be able to do point-to-point transport on Earth, but we're going to get to all the details in future episodes. I think a very cool thing is to see the rapid progress. Like, SpaceX is a company that works without breaks. They work 24/7, but also I saw construction that they're doing, and I've never seen so many tractors work in such a small confined area so quickly. And they're just like, it's like one tractor moves in and the next one, they're like the perfect timing. It's like watching some orchestra or something. It's just really remarkable. Even just the construction of the base. This isn't them building rockets. It's just the spirit of what they do and how they do it. And yeah, they're building up Brownsville, which is the nearby town. Elon donated like $30 million for the development of Brownsville. And right after the launch, there was actually like a space fest in downtown Brownsville, and it was really beautiful. I think we may have some photos of that, but you used to live in Brownsville. What are your thoughts on what Brownsville was like and how things have been changing?
So last time I was at Boca Chica Beach before it actually just recently became incorporated as a town, StarBase. But back then it was basically a kind of a beach with not really any amenities. The fancy beach was and is South Padre Island. And Boca Chica did have a number of homes around there, which got appropriated and bought out by SpaceX. There's some houses that remained. But Brownsville is a border town. It was always looking for some great thing to happen to bring additional technology. It always had an interest in being a tech town, but needed a means to be able to do that. It has a very important seaport over there, and it's right on the border. Literally, you can walk to Mexico from Brownsville. So it's strategically located, and for the space operations, the fact that it's right on the Gulf of America, as it is now, that when the launches occur, they can go into and over the water, so that if there's a mishap or what have you, you don't have these rockets flying right over dry land. So it's perfectly located. It was a win, I think, for the city to ultimately get SpaceX to go there. I don't know if they would have preferred that there not be a separate incorporated city. I'm not sure about the politics and what happened with that, but this certainly does benefit the greater Brownsville area and Cameron County that it's located in. I'm just going through some of the other pictures that you sent from that event. Certainly, it's not the way it used to be. It's got a whole new thing going on there, and now this is a hub for technology and space travel eventually to who knows to where, maybe even to Mars, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. The most important cities on Earth are port cities. And once Mars becomes an actual civilization, and that is far out, but within a decade or two, hopefully, then this will be the gateway to Mars. So yeah, I think there could be a tremendous future for the city if this becomes the port city for Mars, essentially.
Yeah, again, great for the city of Brownsville and for the surrounding areas. And again, it's cool that you got a chance to go there, and that you can be able to go back again and do some more poking around, get some more pictures, and we'll share with our audience what you find out.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's something everybody should experience. And once you go once, you really just want to go back. So I definitely plan on going back sometime, and hopefully you'll join me for that.
I think what's remarkable is, like you were saying, it's very accessible. It's not like some big government installation. You can get fairly close to see what's going on. And I think that that's very approachable and very laid back, and it gives you a different feel than maybe what you'd expect. And it's a nice place to go. You can travel into Mexico briefly. You can go to South Padre Islands. A lot of things to see and do. I expect to get a thank you from the Brownsville Chamber of Commerce for the plug. But ultimately, yeah, I think it's great that you're able to go there. So
just a shout out for if anybody wants a phenomenal, very in-depth technological investigative type of research of the development of this rocket, there's a YouTube channel called CSI StarBase, and he does phenomenal job basically analyzing every single development of the missile and the stage 0, which is like the launch platforms and stuff like that. There are a bunch of other what about it, I think, is another YouTube channel on the subject. There are a ton of them. Everyday Astronaut is phenomenal. It's the most exciting thing happening on Earth. So yeah, I think everybody should follow. And like we said, we'll discuss this much more in depth in future episodes as well.
Yep, absolutely. And given that the episode had a lot of kind of deep, not pleasant conversation in the earlier part of the episode, we are going to finish off the way we usually do with some things that might bring some amusement and perhaps a little more than usual to just like cushion. So maybe transitioning from Brownsville, Texas, we can transition to France.
Back to France again.
Why not? Now, again, remember, not everything is real. So a disclaimer, what you're going to see right now isn't real, but there's some level of amusement. People have been talking about how President Macron got smacked by his wife.
There is a video of that.
There is a video. We did see that happen. And then this one came up. And again, for all the fact checkers, this next particular video isn't rooted in reality other than comic reality. So we're going to go and share the extended clip of what happened after Macron's wife slapped him in the airplane, and then you realize that the door's open. The funniest part is his reaction. Oh no, the door's open, and she basically pushed his face back or what have you, but he was quite startled. So somebody created this extended video of what really happened. Let's take a look. And maybe this explains why President Macron's got his hands so full lately that he hasn't had a chance to get his country in order. He's got all these riots and things happening in the streets.
Yeah, hopefully his wife is realizing how far down he's falling and she's trying to push him in the right direction. What's funny about this is that it is usually we want to see AI animations. We want to see them as realistic as possible. This is as shitty as possible, but it actually adds to the allure. It just makes it funnier because it's like this.
Yeah,
It's like
I mean,
what we think of as like cheap AI, right? And it's just
cheap
funny.
AI. Yeah, it's just listen. It's for comedy relief. It just basically everybody's talking about it, so might as well have some fun with it. Obviously, it's so over the top, exaggerated, and it's not intended to make anyone actually believe that it's real. With that being said, as AI improves, you start getting more and more clips that you don't know what's real and what isn't. Some are less obvious. I'm going to play another one for you, which I don't think you've seen. Maybe you have. And this is what we have. In the next year or two, you'll be seeing more and more of things like this. At least this one's being honest about it. Here we go.
In a stunning development, Canada has declared war on the United States. Let's go to Joe Braxton, who is live at the border.
I'm currently at the border, but there is no war. Mom, Dad, I know this looks real, but it's all AI.
Grandpa, I'm fine. This is just AI. You don't need to wire money to anyone. I am not in love with you. And I do not need your money for a plane ticket. I am AI.
This fake moon landing footage isn't classified. It's AI.
You're probably wondering how I got rich with crypto. The truth is, I didn't get rich off crypto. I don't even exist.
You might be able to tell this is fake now, but it's gonna keep getting better.
We're all AI.
There could be aliens, but I'm not one of them. I'm AI.
An herbal supplement did not cure my cancer. I'm not even real.
Uncle Fred, the government has not been taken over by lizard people.
You don't need to send us $5,000 in gift cards because you missed jury duty.
Grandma, it's not real. It's AI.
It's AI.
It's AI.
Bro, it's AI.
Fake faces.
Real consequences.
Think before you trust.
In a stunning development, Canada has declared war on the United States. Let's go to Joe Braxton, who is live at the border.
I'm currently at the border, but there is no war. Mom, Dad, I know this looks...
That's more from Google VO3, just like we had last time. It's getting really crazy good, isn't it?
Yeah, I think like here it's still noticeable that it's AI and it's still very short clips. Wait till for VO5 or VO8 and it'll just be indistinguishable from truth, and that becomes a worrying time.
And that's what they're saying. They're saying, listen, this is
That's nothing.
You could still tell now, but soon you might not be able to tell. And listen, it's almost like a public service announcement to everybody, just saying this is the way it is, and you got to just be aware of it. It's getting crazy real. That being said, again, and a few laughs here, a few laughs there, a public service announcement in the middle. What happens when you're an Israeli in Germany at a comedy club? Do you want to find out?
Sure.
Nothing like having the Germans throw it in your face. Here you go. I don't think you saw this one.
I think I did.
Are you all German? Is anybody?
I'm here.
Yes, cool. I'm aware you're here. I acknowledge your existence. What are you?
What am I?
Israeli, okay. I am here. Hello, I'm here. Why don't you acknowledge my existence, huh? Acknowledge. You're Israeli, right? Come on, people, come on. You visiting your friend?
Yes, I'm here.
German?
Yes.
When you say friend?
He means lovers.
Lovers. Yes, we are lovers. Where'd you guys meet?
In the festival.
I'm glad you made it. You went to a German festival.
Yeah.
How did you come together there?
Someone brought him into our camp.
Did you hear what she said? With the accent, it was perfect. Someone brought him to my camp. Nice. Then what?
I think we all know.
Actually, one guy, he asked very politely if you can make a Jew joke.
A German guy.
Yes.
He asked you, hello, can I make a joke about the Jews? Come, I will tell you, come to the camp. No, I will tell you a secret. Was the joke good?
No.
I didn't think it was.
The pretended I was insulted.
Oh, did he buy you beer?
Yeah.
Did she also want to tell you a joke? And you were like, this is very insulting. The only way I could forgive you is if you sucked on these nuts.
So, listen, that's the thing of humor, that you could joke around about things which we touched upon, some topics that are not particularly pleasant. But again, you ultimately, that's the whole thing. You should be able to have some fun at your own expense. And
at others' expense.
Yeah, listen, that's the magic of being with a comedian who can actually do that and control the audience and on the spur of a moment come up with a topic to discuss. And obviously it shows the intellect of the comedian when they're like this is a German comedian, he gets the stereotype of the Israeli that isn't entirely wrong.
Yeah.
And he was able to craft a thing based on that, and it was all in good fun. So I think that's what makes it interesting. Ultimately, it touches the core of humanity when you can connect like that. And
I think it's very worrisome when there are societies who are unwilling to accept any comedy about their leaders, etc. If you go to North Korea and you try and make fun of Kim Jong-un, you'll be dead. If you go to Paris and you try and make fun of Muhammad, like we saw with Charlie Hebdo, which is this satirical comedy newspaper, and they just made a drawing of Muhammad and they were massacred. Muslims came and murdered them. And so it's just really important to realize that everybody should be able to accept comedy of all sides. We should be open to it. Obviously, shouldn't target anybody in particular obsessively, but it's awesome and fun when you make to have jokes on everybody. And like you said, it's the cure to almost all problems. But it is worth noting when societies are completely unwilling to accept any comedy against them, but are very actively, openly willing to use comedy against others. When as long as everybody's open to it, it's a very good thing. When it's a one-sided thing, it's a problem.
Yeah, and listen, I think that's back to what we were talking about earlier. And that's how we don't want to be in a society where people are indoctrinated or taught a narrative that is not based on truth. I think that's the sad part. Ultimately, we have a lot of that. And we showed Harvard University with the grads there. And unfortunately, we were asked to include a commercial for Harvard University. They're struggling right now. And their federal funding is being cut. They have all this money and they're going to have to actually touch their endless amount of money that they have in endowments that they don't want to touch. So we're going to put in a plug for them that perhaps will generate some more interest in people going there. And right at the beginning of that, we threw in spirit of trying to bring people together. A lot of people have been anti-Elon Musk and saying things about him and calling him a Nazi and all these types of things. And it's nice to see him and Hakeem Jeffries coming together and being of one mind and one kind. And let's take a look at that, and then it'll segue into the public service announcement for Harvard University.
Ever wish your child was a full-blown liberal idiot, desperate to turn them into a Jew-hating extremist who'd rather burn a flag than think for themselves? Harvard University has the answer. For the low price of $500,000, we'll transform your kid into the kind of zealot who sets bags of shit on fire in the street, screaming about whatever CNN's whining about today. Our elite program guarantees they'll swap reason for rage and facts for feelings, faster than you can say protest permit. But wait, there's more. Our tuition doesn't cover the essentials. Blue hair dye, nose piercings, and a weak, flaccid body are sold separately. And don't forget parents, you'll be footing the bill for these. Plus financially supporting your adult child for the rest of their life because they'll never become productive members of society. Why work when you can protest?
Results not guaranteed. Side effects include chronic virtue signaling, allergic reactions to logic, and an obsession with trending hashtags. Harvard University is not liable for arrests, property damage, or your kid's newfound hatred of you. Consult your bank account before enrolling.
Yeah, that's really great. Harvard has an endowment of over $5 billion or $10 billion that they haven't touched and they don't want to spend. Instead of that, they've been using taxpayer funds. So this is a very comedic take on that. I think it is important to recognize the difference in the way the media treated when Elon said, my heart goes out to you, and he raised his hand, versus when Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat, did the same hand gesture exactly. And for weeks, we couldn't stop hearing about how Elon is a Nazi. Yet when Hakeem Jeffries, every article is, he didn't do anything wrong, and it was just an innocent gesture, and nobody looked this way. And I guess it just comes to show how crooked the media is.
Yeah, and AOC did the same gesture. Other people have done the same gesture.
Obama, everybody. It's just,
But
there's
it makes
no
the
issue
point,
with
right?
raising your hand unless
On
it's
the media.
specifically in a Nazi context and you're trying to promote Nazism, like some neo-Nazis do. They'll march in the streets and raise their hands in a Nazi salute. Then it may be problematic. But the problem with the Nazis wasn't that they raised their hands. It was that they massacred millions and millions of people and tried to conquer all of Europe. That's the issue. So even the mustache, there's nothing wrong with having a short, ugly mustache under your nose. It's just the problem is that the person who happened to be familiar by that tried to annihilate an entire people.
It's lost some popularity. It's not on the top 3 list of how to get groomed.
Yeah.
But it goes to show just how the media can take a narrative and just misrepresent it and change it. No one's saying that Hakeem Jeffries, the head of the minority leader of the House of Representatives, is a Nazi. No, we're not saying that. It's like ridiculous. And there's nothing wrong with his gesture. But again, if the wrong person does the same exact gesture, someone's going to go and say the wrong thing. And that's the theme of twisting the truth or blurring the lines of reality. Just like some people think they could dress a certain way and that they can pass as being a certain person. We have
media is at an all-time low is because they've been caught doing this again and again, and people just don't buy it anymore. You have to be really stupid to still buy the media's narratives on this topic or really any other topic almost.
I agree. And there's some things you just shouldn't believe, like this next guy who shows up at a Jewish community center, a JCC, and says he's a rabbi and he wants to meet with the rabbi. But you take one look at this guy, this is just, judge for yourself.
A man in Nashville with alleged neo-Nazi ties was arrested for trying to trespass into a JCC dressed in disguise as a rabbi. I do not think you guys are ready to see what this guy's rabbi disguise was, okay? You ready? Let's take a closer look. Let us all take a minute to bask in this guy's rabbi disguise. Take a look. He looks like Dumbledore in the middle of a brutal divorce. It's been a terrible, awful year for the Jews. Let's all enjoy this. His hat, I'm pretty sure, is made of paper. That's an obvious fake beard. And what is with the white ribbon? That's what priests do. Jews, we don't do white ribbons. If you're gonna do a hate crime, you can't just Google it, okay? This is what happens if you go to ChatGPT and you say, hey, I want a hate crime at JCC. What should I dress as? His name is Keith Garland. He's 31 years old, and they caught on to the ruse when he walked into the JCC and asked to speak to a rabbi dressed like an Amish guy on a bender. I don't know what you mean I'm not a rabbi. I bought this rabbi hat on Temu. Got him? I love you. Don't change your ways. This is perfect. It's art. It's beautiful. Shabbat shalom. A man in
That would be what you'd get off of Temu, just by the way. I think that's...
Yeah, if you wrote rabbi costume and Temu, that's what you're going to get. But the sad part is that this guy was trying to commit an hate crime. He walked into JCC, for anybody unfamiliar, is a Jewish community center. So he walked into a Jewish community center, and I don't know what he wanted to do, but probably not very good things by the fact that he is a neo-Nazi. But like you said, you got to learn to laugh about what happens, whether it's good or it's bad. You just got to laugh along because life throws you lemons, but you got to enjoy the lemonade.
It's just scary that sometimes it's hard to tell the comedy from the reality and the reality from the comedy. This is hotel reality from the comedy. But that being said, you've been doing quite a bit of traveling the last few years, and you got to be careful because sometimes you might get a call to confirm your next travel stay. This could be you. So let's put yourself in the moment and think you answering the call, getting an automated call from the next hotel stay you're going to be at.
Hello. Hello, this is Hotel's automatic confirmation service. Our records indicate that
Daniel
is scheduled to stay with us on
July 1st through July 5th.
If this is correct, please say yes. If this is incorrect, please say no.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we did not receive a response. Please say yes if your reservation is correct, or no if it is incorrect.
Yes.
You answered no.
What?
Your reservation has been canceled.
No. Hello?
Our records indicate that your reservation was non-refundable. Therefore, you have chosen to forfeit your deposit. If this is correct,
Hello?
please say
Hello?
yes. If this is not correct, please say no.
What? No!
You have officially canceled your reservation.
No,
Thank you very much for
hello?
booking with us, and if you'd like to book a Hilton Hotels vacation in the future, please simply log on to our
No, I want
website,
my vacation now.
hotels.com.
Hello?
I can gladly help you book another trip via our automated system.
Representative. Hello?
I'm sorry, I did not understand your request.
Operator, hello?
If you would like to book a different hotel stay with us, please say reservation. If you would like to speak to a representative, just say representative.
Representative.
You chose reservation.
No!
I can gladly help you book another trip. Please say the name of the city you would like to visit.
Operator, representative, agent, operator, operator.
You have chosen
Abondo, Colombia.
Oh my God! No, no!
And they keep going on, and they finally tell him that it's a prank. And these,
I think his wife called in.
they actually, yeah, and they do a bunch of these. There's a whole series of them. You want to? We'll put the link to their channel in the description. It's hilarious. All of them are absolutely hilarious, and they get put up to this by someone that's close to the person. Like in this case, they let them know that they have this hotel reservation and when the dates were and so forth. And but again, you never know. And the problem is that the current state of these automated systems is about like that. Half the time it doesn't understand you, doesn't follow the prompts, and it's not inconceivable that you're thinking that thing's legit. That's like a real just crappy automated system. You just forfeited your deposit on your hotel stays. In the future, that probably wouldn't fly because we think AI would be a little bit better than that.
Yeah, AI will definitely be much, much better than that. It gets scary when it really knows all the details about you, because that's when it seems trustworthy. And then when it starts to do all this crazy shit, that's when it really gets you. But it really resonates with all the frustration we all feel when speaking to these really crappy automated systems.
Yeah, so I think it takes it full circle. It's like on the one hand, like we had the clip a few minutes ago, showing the quality of some of the AI now and how it's going to get better. And then you still have this. So the thing is,
this seems like human, not AI, but it comes across as AI, and that's what makes it.
But be careful what we wish for, right? In a way, we can make fun of the AI being like this now, but it's not going to be like this much longer. So what's going to be better? We're going to miss the good old days when the AI sounded like this prankster.
To be honest, though, the phone systems nowadays, they're not real AI. They don't use like large language models, etc. Most of them, at least, or at least until recently. So yeah, we don't want to blame AI. This is just like really crappy phone systems.
And with that, all we can hope is that you don't get pranked. Be on the alert. And in the meantime, try to understand the world around you. Listen, talk, voice, comment, and join the discussion. Join the discussion. That's the most important thing. Like
laugh.
Free speech, and make sure to laugh along the way. Whenever you can actually do that, is the best medicine. And come back next time for more of the truth and more dose of the best laughter as well.
Thank you for listening in to the YoJoeShow podcast. We really enjoy you here on this uncensored episode. So really have a great week, everybody.
We'll see you again soon.
Bye, Joe.
Bye, Yo.